Okay, all right. We're live now for real.
It's not a still image.
It's not a still image, right?
Oh, God,
just
dad
a little
jokes.
quick tease right off the bat, right? So hello, welcome to the ZBrush 4R8 streaming event.
Yeah.
Pretty excited about this. We have a jam-packed event.
Jam-packed.
Yes, jam-packed in store for you today. You know, at last year's ZBrush Summit, some of you might have seen the sneak peek of ZBrush 4R8, but today we are going to demonstrate some new features in ZBrush 4R8. And as well, because I've already seen in the chat, announce the release date at the end of this broadcast when we will be putting ZBrush 4R8
Exciting.
out there to you.
Yeah.
You know, I also want to remind everybody that's watching, since we got people watching, the ZBrush Summit this year is going to be October 5th through the 8th. We've already got an amazing lineup of artists. It's going to be another fun event. Definitely tune in to that. If you can physically come to that, come on down for that. So we hope to see you there as well. So for this event, we've got this happening in 3 sections. We're going to be starting with our Ask ZBrush master, Joseph Druss.
He's a master.
He's on video 199, is it now?
199, right?
199. That's it, you're done.
I think we need to have
Said
a
it all
party
done.
for
I
it
said
too.
I
dude.
said everything.
Done. All right, so Druss is going to be starting off today. Yours truly, if you don't know me, Paul
Mr.
Gabry,
Paul Gabry.
the annoying, bad joking guy. So
Dad,
stick with me.
It's like dad jokes.
Dad jokes?
Dad jokes.
All
Dad
right.
jokes, man. That's why this hat's perfect.
And then, perfect. And then to the right of me here, we have Solomon Blair, who will be ending the presentation. So this evening is being broadcast actually in 5 different platforms.
Count 'em,
5. So today we're connecting with you guys on our ZBrush Live page. We're connecting on our YouTube. We're connecting on our Facebook, on our Twitch, and also livestream.com. So you have 5 different ways to
We're also
watch.
projecting into space.
We're-
Radio signals only.
There's-
You never know.
From space you can see us.
Exactly,
Is that what you're saying?
exactly.
All right, I like that. I'll go with it. Well, Druss
We'll go
did
with
make
it.
some ship in this version.
True,
That's ridiculous.
We got a lot of hard surface stuff. We
Yeah,
got a
nice.
lot of awesome stuff to show.
So, of course, while we're doing this, we're going to be monitoring your questions and things you have. So we'll be using the various chats. So we'll be monitoring our Twitch, our Facebook, and our YouTube. We'll be answering everything that we can but obviously we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth. So some of the answers for your questions might even come up during the stream. So don't, if you get a question and we don't get to it, it might be just because Solomon might be presenting something that you're asking about.
But we'll do our best to throw those out there if we can.
We're going to do our best to answer whatever we can for you guys today as well. So just like the summit, for those that tune in that, we're going to be giving away some prizes. Some prizes today.
As you can see, well, I
So-
don't know if you can see. Then we got some swag here.
That's the official ZBrush swag. So you got yourself a hat,
Nice T-shirt.
a
My
hoodie.
favorite, the hoodie.
Here,
Very nice hoodie.
I'll go
Throw
ahead,
it up
you can
there.
show the
There we
hoodie.
go. Oh, isn't that wonderful? The white zipper.
Wonderful.
The white zipper.
It's perfect for
Wonderful.
summer. It's great time of year.
Sweatshirt.
And then a nice little mug right here, which
Yep.
I see Solomon's using himself.
I usually have
right
about 3 on hand in my office.
now. You probably do.
in
that.
cycle.
One's holding pencils.
Yeah.
One's holding coffee.
They all have drinks in them. I just
okay.
yeah.
All right.
I'm the drink guy.
What else we have today that we're going to be giving away at the end of the broadcast is a very cool prize valued over $4,500. So
Power
our
pack?
friends,
Oh,
the
and it's
ZBrush Power Pack, we've given us a Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, the 16-inch. So some lucky viewer is going to win this, and not just that. You're going to also already have KeyShot for ZBrush
Yep.
on their Pro. You're also going to have the bridge going from ZBrush to KeyShot. You're also already going to have ZBrush on there. And we've also got the Flip Steady, which is a very cool stand that's made for the mobile device. So we'll be giving that away at the end of the broadcast. So you're going to want to stick around to get it in the chance. So you're probably asking, how do you even have the capability to win this prize? So of course, just like we do at the summit, we'll be using our Twitter account. Okay, so we are going to ask questions. And to my right over here that you can't see off camera, we got our man Kyle Johnstone, Michael Nisbet over here. They're going to be feeding us questions. All right, so you're going to want to go to Twitter. When I ask that question, okay, you're going to want to give the answer, and you have to make sure you put the hashtag ZBrush 4R8. Again, I'm going to ask you the question. You're going to go to your Twitter, and you're going to put the answer and hashtag ZBrush 4R8.
And hashtag ZBrush 4R8.
No, don't do hashtag, because then Kyle will not discover you.
I think we got hashtags down.
Right.
I think we got it.
It's kind of hard to say that when you're saying hashtag.
It is. It's so much work.
It is. Okay, so I want to start off with actually giving something away. What do you say?
Sure.
Yeah?
I say yeah.
Let's do it. So we're going to give away one of our little swag packages here. Okay? So here is your question. Again, you're going to be using your Twitter feed.
Can I answer this question?
No, you cannot.
Gosh, man. No, you
You
can't.
can answer it, but in your head, not out loud. Okay?
Just
Right.
mouth it out.
We'll get to you.
Joseph is a winner.
By the way, if you got any popcorn in hand or chips or anything, you might want to get some because Russ is going to go for a while. All right.
All good stuff.
So here's your question. What annual event does Pixologic host in Hollywood, California? So that is your question to go. So the first person that gets that question correct with the hashtag ZBrush4R8 is going to be the lucky winner of this wonderful Swagalicious series.
Lucky Tito.
Oh, you're throwing the little Louis thing in there,
Throwing
eh?
two lines out.
You got to keep him around. You got to keep him around. All right, so enough of me talking. And again, thanks for tuning in. So what I want to do now is hand it off to our first presenter, the man, the myth, the Ask ZBrush Master. Whatever else you're going with these days, whatever handles you're going with.
Really
these
building
days.
them up.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joseph Dress.
All right. So thank you all for tuning in here. And we got a bunch of stuff I want to show you guys that I've been working on and messing with 4R8. So some new features that have been added to the software here. I'm just going to cover some of those, and then we're going to go into Paul, and he's going to cover some more, and then we're going to transport finally to Solomon, who's going to cover even more. So lots of stuff in here. And Paul's going to joke this entire time that he's going to eat popcorn while I do this because I have a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to try to get through. So the first thing I want to start off with is the Gizmo 3D. So the Gizmo 3D is an alternate manipulator for the transpose line. And to activate this, you just need to have a model loaded inside of ZBrush. You need to be in edit mode. And then you can just simply come up here and click either move, scale, and rotate. And this will activate the Gizmo 3D. Now, the Gizmo 3D is an alternate manipulator. So this means if you really, really like the transpose line, you can still use the transpose line, and you can do that just by coming up here and toggling this on and off. And this is going to allow you to switch back and forth between these two manipulators. I personally, since the Gizmo 3D has been introduced inside of ZBrush, I rarely use the transpose line anymore, and I'm primarily always using the Gizmo 3D. So the Gizmo 3D is a universal manipulator. So this means as you hover over the different parts of this, you're going to get a little context-sensitive thing that pops up on the bottom telling you what each of these manipulators are going to do. And this will allow you to perform move, scale, and rotate functions all on your model. So if I just have this model selected here, I can move it, I can then rotate it, I can scale it. So you can just manipulate this a lot easier instead of switching back and forth between multiple transform lines. Now, in addition to this, you have the ability to change where your pivot point is. So we have a lock and unlock feature here. And this will allow you to unlock your gizmo, position it in a new location. You can then lock it, and then you can perform the translations from that area. So really handy for modifying things and repositioning items, or even working with articulated joints for, say, characters or toys and collectibles. So another thing we've added to the Gizmo 3D here is not only the ability to move a single subtool, but to move multiple subtools. So if I go to the tool palette over here and open up this subtool palette, you're going to see that this tool right now contains 8 different parts. So the truck right now consists of 8 different subtools. So let's say I worked on this truck and I modeled some stuff, but now I need to reposition it. Maybe I need to rotate the entire thing. So on the Gizmo 3D selector up at the top here, the last little icon here is called Transpose All Selected Subtools. So by clicking this, it's going to activate this Transpose All Subtools mode. So currently, with it just turned on by default, it's going to look at all the subtools that are in your scene. So it's going to take all 8 of these subtools. Now I can come through and perform any of the operations. So I can rotate, I can move, and I can even scale all the subtools at once.
When you move, you're supposed to make sound effects. By the way.
Sound effects?
Yeah.
Well,
Just
that's why you're here.
Don't lie. Do what you do even as an adult when you're using this truck, okay? We all know you have this at home.
Yeah.
Pew, pew, pew.
So this has been huge for manipulating assets in ZBrush here, just moving things around, changing where I want them, and I don't have to go through and do every single subtool separately or even go into, say, Transpose Master. Now, you may not want to move all the subtools at once. So let's say I only want to move part of the subtools here. So I have my truck, and let's say I want to go through and just maybe offset the top of it. So maybe it's a monster truck, and I want it to ramp something. So as long as you have this Transpose All Selected Subtools action on, you can hold down the Control and Shift key, which is going to give you your Select Rectangle brush. I can now drag this across any subtools that I'm seeing on my screen here, and when I release, it's going to select those subtools and then mask any other subtools. So by just doing this across the top of the truck here, I've masked out the wheels subtools, and now I'm just left with the body. So now I can manipulate these, and those wheels are going to stay in that same position. So I can raise this up a little bit, maybe go to the side here, offset this some position. So it looks like it's, going wild over some muck, dirt.
What was your favorite? Bigfoot?
Bigfoot.
Monster trucks?
Bigfoot.
You were a Bigfoot guy.
Yeah, Bigfoot. Mm-hmm.
Grave Digger was the other one?
Grave Digger.
Grave Digger?
Yeah.
Not the Dave Matthews song?
No.
And so you can change your selections on the fly too. So I can just drag these out, and you can see I can start adding. So if I want to move the bumper, and then maybe move the engine, or maybe move this crossbar up here, I can do that. And now those are just selected, and I continue modifying like this. So this has been a very handy functionality inside of ZBrush here to allow me just to manipulate multiple subtools. So Gizmo 3D there, everybody. Gizmo
That was
3D.
great.
Now you will notice that on the Gizmo 3D there was this other little icon. And if I hover over this, it's called Customize. And so stay tuned, because Solomon's going to be covering what is in that menu. I think
Well,
Paul may
me
hit on
too.
it
I'm going.
You're going to hit on
Yeah,
it.
Take
I'm
it
going
if you
in.
want to.
I'm not going to touch
You know what? We'll just sit back and you
know
go
what?
ahead
You
if you want.
just go keep going. Keep
This is
going.
great. I'll just chitter chat with the people.
Yep. So now I have this model, which is this truck that I've been demoing this gizmo on. And now I want to talk about how I created this. So this was created inside of ZBrush using our Live Boolean feature. And Live Boolean is a system that's going to allow you to use multiple subtools to generate Boolean effects. So union, subtraction, and intersections on your models. So I just want to demo this as an example. So I'm going to go into Lightbox here, and I'm going to load in another project really quick.
Drust, your sayings actually come. Hashtag in Joseph we drust.
Oh, man. So you're starting another one.
I'm starting another one.
You did
Another
start
one.
that one, by
Another
the way.
I say
right.
go with it. That's a good. I've always. Doesn't your brother use that one?
He does,
too?
yes. Trust and Drust. That's
Was
what
that
my
where it
brother
came
uses.
from?
Yeah. Well, no, because I'll always be talking to Joseph. And I'm like, you know what? In Joseph I drust.
It just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
It
works.
just rhymes.
It works.
All right, so here I have an example of a model here. So another tool that has 9 different parts. And if I just go through the individual parts here, you can see a lot of these are just simplistic shapes. So I have cylinders, cones, all sorts of things. A lot of the parts here on this tool were modeled inside of ZBrush using the ZModeler brush and a lot of dynamic subdivision. So if I have all these tools visible, this is what I'm getting on screen. Well, if I come up here to the top and I hover over this live Boolean button, and now I activate this, what this is going to do, it's going to activate this rendering Boolean preview mode. So by turning this on, I'm taking those subtools, and now I'm getting this as my result.
Well, that's key. I'd like to point out it's an addition to BPR.
Yes, yes. So it's another way to render models inside of ZBrush, giving you this Boolean preview. So it's going through all these tools here and generating this effect, and this is my final result. So I'm going to demonstrate here how I just created this case fan really quick, just to show you the basic principles of the live Boolean. So I'm going to come up here to the tool palette again, and I'm going to grab this starter square here. So this is a simple primitive inside of ZBrush here, and normally I would use this with the ZModeler brush. For this model here, I just want to add some subdivisions to it. And so instead of coming down and manually adding normal subdivisions, I'm going to add dynamic subdivisions. So I'm going to go to the Geometry tab, open up Dynamic Subdivisions, and I'm going to activate Dynamic. Now, if you never use Dynamic inside of ZBrush, it's extremely handy because you can keep your meshes really low, but then you can preview them in this high-resolution result. So with Dynamic on by default, I'm getting my cube here turned into this kind of object. So it's taking all the edges, all the corners, and just applying a smoothing to them. Well, one of the nice features I use a ton inside the Dynamic menu here is this Cube Grid option. And this is going to look at all the edges on your model, and it's going to start generating edge geometry around it to allow you to process this and create hard and soft shapes. So if I set this to say around 3 or 4, I'm going to get on my polyframes here, and now I just adjust this coverage, you can see I can now tailor how hard or how soft this shape is. So I use this all the time, especially with this live Boolean system here, to generate soft parts or hard parts on my mesh, and then I can use them to subtract and add to other elements. So that is the dynamic subdivision option inside the Geometry tab. Now I'm going to go back to my subtool list here, and you'll see I do have this live Boolean system active. But on this mesh right here, I'm not getting any results. And this is because I only have one single subtool in the scene. So in order for the Boolean process to generate something, I need to have more than one subtool. So I'm just going to come over here to the subtool palette. I'm just going to append in another mesh. I'm just going to click this, and I'm going to select this cylinder pipe mesh. So if I bring this in, I'm now getting this as my result. And if I select this pipe and just turn on the polyframes here, you can see this is another pretty simple shape, and I've set up some creasing, and it has dynamic subdivision applied. So now I have 2 tools in my palette. So I have my initial square, and then I have my cylinder pipe. So as long as I have the live Boolean option on, and I come over to the tool palette over here, I can now change any of these icons on the subtool palette. So this currently is in union mode. So this is just going to take both these objects as a positive shape and generate the result. So I'm getting an effect like this. Now if I come over here and change this to subtractive mode, and then turn off my polyframes, this is now going to take that starter square, and it's going to subtract that cylinder pipe. So giving you the preview of this Boolean operation. Now this operation that's happening right now with the live Boolean is 100% dynamic. So this means at this stage, I can select this cylinder pipe, I can go back to my Gizmo 3D, and I can start manipulating the shape and see the results change on the fly. So taking these 2 simple elements here and now generating new geometry. Now I can just use it as a subtractive form, but I can also do intersections as well. So if I switch to this other icon over here, this is going to allow me to get a result of where the 2 meshes intersect. So as you can see here, I now have this effect. Once again, fully dynamic, so I can start scaling this and moving it and generating different shapes. So the live Boolean system, you may be asking, well, what would I use this for? So the main thing with the live Boolean is it's going to allow you to create shapes faster, extremely fast, compared to methods that would take a long time in traditional modeling processes. So as an example of this with the cylinder pipe, I'm going to turn on my polyframe so I can see it here. I'm just going to rotate to the side a bit, and I'm just going to turn off perspective. I'm just going to start scaling this pipe down. I just want to scale it until that original shape there sticks out a little bit. Then I'm going to come over here, and instead of the intersection mode, I'm going to change back to subtraction. And now I'm going to turn off my polyframes, and then I'm just going to scale this up a little bit. So as you can see, as I'm scaling this up and manipulating it, I'm changing my shape. So I'm going to shrink it in a little bit more and scale it up, shrink it in a little more and scale it up. And now you can see I'm generating this extremely complex form. So things like this would take a really long time to model in traditional processes. So you'd have to worry about where those edges are going to fall, where the vertices are going to connect, and how you're going to get this harsh line and the transition to this other smooth element. Now, since this is a dynamic process as well, you can still come in and manipulate each of the tools. You can also change their functionality. So if I go back to my starter square here and go down to, say, the geometry tab, I can now modify the coverage on my dynamic subdivision here to tailor that other shape still. I can even turn off dynamic and see the result without that dynamic subdivision applied. So you have a lot of flexibility in here with your tools and with your meshes inside of ZBrush. And then with the Boolean results, you can generate even more complex shapes. So I'm just going to go quickly through now and just add some more parts to this. So I'm going to append in another subtool. So not only can you use just 2 subtools in your scene to generate the Boolean effect, you can start adding multiple subtools and set up multiple Boolean operations to allow you to achieve different effects. So I'm going to click Append. And this time I'm going to grab this Z-molitor cylinder shape here. And if I just select this and then isolate it, so you guys can see what this looks like. So it's just another cylinder, and on one side of it, I've started pulling out some of the geometry to get this negative shape generated. So think of this like as a stamp. So like something that you'd have a piece of clay and you'd punch this into, and it'd generate the resulting form that was created. So with this, I can go back to my original mesh here, and I can start moving this into the other body. So I'm going to come over here and turn this into subtractive. And now I'm just going to start dragging this in. And as you can see, as I start hitting those other shapes, if I turn on my polyframes, you can start seeing cutting into that surface.
So I want to point out, because there's a lot of this happening right now in the chat, this is not actually creating the geometry right now, everybody. This is a rendering phase. So
totally dynamic.
It's totally non-destructive.
Non-destructive, yes.
So he's going to be going a lot more deeper in this. But there is no, the geometry that he's using is the geometry of the pieces that he's using.
Yes.
Right? And you know you don't have to have dynamic on.
Right. Hence the live Boolean.
Hence
live Boolean.
He's going to be going a lot more examples with this.
Oh, I got tons.
He's got tons. Again, Drost isn't
pop-
going to get
Throw a
off
little extra in
the
there,
desk.
you know.
All right, so as I move this in, you can see it's still taking that stamp and pushing it in, and then eventually it's going to reach the end of that. So right now it's coming through, and now it's going to go transitioning to that cylinder, right? So now I'm getting the cylinder cut and the other shape pushed in. And if I reach the back side of this, I'm now going to get this effect. So it's not only cutting through, but I'm cutting that design into my original mesh as well. And here now I can tailor this to adjust the thickness on this. I could even rotate to the back side here. I'm going to turn off my perspective. And I can now even rotate this. So I'm just changing that other part, and this is allowing me to just change the design on the fly. So if it's too small, I can scale this up. You know, I can rotate it again. If I don't want the points to go to the corners, then go to the top. So very fluid and a very dynamic process. Now I'm just going to model a little more on this shape as well. So I want to append in some other parts. So on the original fan, you have these parts on the side here where the screws would go in to attach to the case of your computer. So I'm going to click Append again, and this time I'm going to grab a bar subtool here. So these are just another set of primitives. If I turn polyframes on, you can see this is the wireframe on those. And I love using the dynamic subdivision. That's the only real reason why everything I use has it. You don't have to have it to use the live Boolean system. I'm going to take these now, and I'm just going to start manipulating here. So I'm just going to scale these down and just make them embed into the surface there. So now I've established that part. Now I want to cut out the hole of where the screws would go. So I've got the plastic form generated. Now I want to punch those holes out. So I'm going to take this tool, and I'm just going to duplicate it. So I'm just going to make a clone of this object. On this one, I'm going to scale it out so it breaches the outer edges here. And then I'm going to scale this down to shrink them a little bit. And now I've created a new shape just by doing that duplication effect that I can now set as subtractive. So I come over here and change this. Now you can see I have those holes punched all the way through. So it's going through these plastic tubes and also through the case of the fan. So now I have that done in a mere matter of seconds. So extremely fast workflow process. Now I'm going to add a few more subtools here to this. So I have some blades. I'm going to bring those in. So I'm coming to the append option here and select those. So I just have a set of blades here. Once again, another piece of geometry that was modeled with the Z-Modeler brush. So if I turn my polyframes in solo, you can see this is what the geometry on that mesh looks like. And now I have this in my scene here, but as you can see, those blades are sticking out of that fan case. Perfect. So that's not going to rotate. It's not going to rotate.
That looks functional. That's good.
You're going to overheat your machine.
I like my fan at home.
So I'm going to add another cutter to just cut the fan blades out. So I'm going to go back to Append here, click this, and I'm going to grab that original cylinder pipe I was messing with and select this and bring that in so it's coming in as a union result. I'm going to change it to subtractive, And if I turn my polyframes off, you can see it's now subtracting the form. Now, if I grow this out, you're going to see, I select the right subtool, if I grow this out, you're going to see that it's also subtracting everything else. Well, I don't want that to happen. I want the rest of my case to stay the same, and then I want this blade to be the only thing that's subtracted by this pipe. So by default, ZBrush is going to look at the hierarchy of your subtools. So it's going to process this list with the Boolean preview from top to bottom. But at any point when you're in your subtool list, you can click on these down arrows here, and this will allow you to restart the Boolean process. So right now it's going through all these meshes, but then if I go to the fan blade here and I change this to a start group now, the Boolean is going to start from the top subtool here. It's going to go through these 5 parts, then it's going to restart and then process till it reaches another start group. So as you can see, now this cylinder pipe here is only trimming the fan and it's not trimming the case. So now I can scale this up and remove that excess topology that was hanging out on the edges, and now I have my fan created. So now this would spin and it'd be able to generate airflow and cool down your computer.
Now it's working.
Yes.
Cool down Kyle in the corner.
Cool down
You can
Kyle.
use the chains too to select a group of subtools as well, right?
Yes.
Just using the shift click. So it's turning off a group of subtools by just shift clicking the one with the
Yes,
arrow.
you can toggle those by clicking these, and this will toggle your groups
Which
as
I
well.
found really helpful.
Yes,
just to
it is.
group.
It is a big help for
If you got 100 or 200 subtools and you're trying to
modifying all those on the
Yeah.
fly.
Oh, with that said, we also changed the way the eyeball works
Ooh, yeah.
when you select,
I'll show that.
which was a feature request, really.
It was
kind
a
of.
feature request,
A lot
yes.
of people and beta testers.
All right, so now that you have this in Boolean preview, right? So you can come through and modify any of these and go to any of these other shapes, change the thing. But it's still just a preview mode. So if I deactivate Booleans, this is what my shape looks like. Well, let's say I want to export this out. Maybe I want to put it in a game engine. Maybe I want to 3D print it. So we've added the functionality to not only preview the live Boolean, but also take the geometry you see and convert a new real geometry mesh out of it. So this, once again, is another non-destructive process. So if I go to my subtool palette here and scroll down, there is a Boolean tab. I can open this up. And in here, we have a Make Boolean Mesh button. So since I used a lot of dynamic subdivision on this model, I'm going to toggle this on as well, which is going to use that dynamic subdivision and apply it first before it does the Boolean process. So when I click this Make Boolean Mesh, it's going to take what I see, and it's going to make me a new tool in the tool palette. So if I come over here and click this, you're going to see that in that matter of seconds, the process has been completed. And if I come back up here, I have a new tool I can click, and this is the result I'm getting. So this is now traditional geometry. Now, on the creation of this, I have 2 subtools created. So this is looking at those 2 start groups I had in my file. So it's looking at that first 5 subtools, and it's giving me this part of the fan case. And then it's looking at those other 2 subtools, and it's giving me this part. Now, if I select one of these and I turn on my polyframes here, you can see this is the geometry we're getting as a result. And this is a key thing with this Make Boolean process when you're using the live Boolean system, is that any geometry that is on your mesh is going to be held, and the only areas of change are going to be where those parts intersected. So this topology right through here is the topology that was on the original cylinder object. This topology right through here is the topology that was on that original square object. And the only areas of change that happened were the areas where those intersected. So this is going to allow you to determine your topology even before you create the Boolean process. And the only parts that are going to change are the parts in between.
Yeah, that's a key. That's definitely a key feature.
It is.
It's
You're
huge.
keeping the geometry that you're using. Yeah.
And so that will now give you the result, and you have the 2 meshes here. You can export these out for print, export them out for game usage, export them out for movie usage, whatever you want. Now, what you just saw here is previewing with very simple shapes. So I was using primitives, I was using cylinders, I was using squares. But that's not all the live Boolean system works with. So I'm going to load in another model here in Lightbox. So I'm going to hit comma to activate Lightbox here. And I'm just going to grab this model and open this in.
This is where we begin knowing what Joseph has in his backyard, by the way, people.
That's
so
right.
Definitely buckle up.
A lot of backyard
lot
examples.
lot of Joseph backyards coming at you in a second here.
Backyard
Just
sculpting.
saying. Just putting it out there.
So here I have some scan data. And this does live in my backyard.
Yeah.
So it's a model of a frog, and I just took some pictures using the usage of photogrammetry and took a bunch of angles and shots and then just generated some 3D mesh out of it, brought it into ZBrush, and then cleaned the hell out of it. So I just went through and cleaned it all up. And right now, this is a 2.3 million polygon mesh. So if I zoom in and turn on my polyframes, you can see that this is fairly dense. So
It's a
lot
Dynamesh,
of
right?
dense, yep, it is a Dynamesh model. So very dense topology all over the surface there. So the live Boolean system doesn't only work with primitives, but it'll also work with Dynamesh models, traditional subdivision models, Z-remesher geometry, or even decimated topologies inside of ZBrush. So I have a few subtools here set up on this file. So if we go to the subtool palette here, I'm going to turn on this subtool and this subtool. And these are just some other concrete blocks here. And if I select one of these guys and then just turn on the polyframes here, you can see these are also very dense Dynameshes. So 1.2 million polygons for that one. And then this one as well is another 1.6. So we're looking at around 6 million polygons for the scene. So I can use these Dynamesh processes on my mesh and use them as subtractive forms. So I'm going to select the concrete, and then I'm just going to switch back to the move gizmo. Turn off my perspective here, move this down, maybe rotate this a little bit, and the poor froggy may need to lose an eye today. So we're going to just generate this cue. So I'm just taking this shape and just engulfing the shape underneath it. And then I'm going to navigate back over here to the subtool palette and make sure I have my live Boolean option turned on, and I'm going to set this to subtractive. And as you'll see, it's now subtracting that Dynamesh form from that other Dynamesh form. So we're looking at those millions of polygons being processed with this live Boolean. And now I can manipulate this, so I can scale this up and down, I can zoom it in and out, I can even rotate it across the surface there. Now once again, you're not only just limited to being able to have this process happen to one subtool. So I can take the second concrete block, grab this one. We're going to switch back to that Gizmo 3D. Going to rotate it, move it in position, maybe angle it some, position it something like this. And then we're going to switch this to the subtractive mode as well. And now I'm cutting into that surface too. And in here I can play and manipulate with this shape. Now while the live Boolean system process is active, you can use anything inside of ZBrush. So one thing that you may want to do with models like this is you may like how the Boolean is affected in a certain area, but you then want to come in and apply some sculpting. So I can switch to, say, the clay buildup brush. And even with the live Boolean system on, I can come across this model here and start sculpting. So if I just click and drag, if I'm on the right subtool here, and you can see I can start sculpting on this mesh. And this is just looking at the Dynamesh model that is in the process here. So this is the Dynamesh model, and I can sculpt across the surface. Now I can also sculpt on the pieces that are generating the negatives. So if I switch to this piece of concrete, I can come across the model here, and now I can sculpt on that negative area.
Zoom in on that.
Zoom in on that.
Go a little bit, brush.
Zoom in.
How did you make the rock
a
pieces?
Portlandia
Someone's asking.
reference.
Did you just use surface
Pound.
noise?
Surface noise. Yep.
You just use surface noise
Yep.
for the person that asked. I don't remember.
And you can use other of the brushes inside of ZBrush too. So not only limited to, say, the clay buildup brush, I can switch to, say, the move brush here, and now I can start moving this negative shape here and configure where that subtraction is happening as well. So as you can see, I can pull this and distort that. And what I'm doing here is I'm distorting this part of the model, and then with the Boolean system active, I'm seeing that change on the fly. So this is huge for just coming in and manipulating where you want these items to process.
It's a lot of fun to just move
It
things
is.
around and see it happening.
It gives a very creative process.
It does.
To let you kind of discover things.
Yes, and you're not locked into any of those forms. Like you can come back and change it at any time.
Continue updating and changing.
So another thing I want to hit on is that I just have two subtractive processes here. But let's say I want to just maybe dissect this frog a little bit more. It's like a science class. So I'm going to select this concrete option here, and I'm just going to use this one as an intersection now. So if I select this mode, I'm now getting the result of that intersection, so where these two parts attach. So now you can see I just have little bits of frog arm here. And I can scale this up and expose more of this model. So now I'm getting this, and I can even move it some, rotate it up and down. If any time you're lost your position of where this effect is happening, you can always turn on your polyframes and see that resulting mesh. I can scale this up more to expose more of that frog.
Perfect.
And so now I can see I have this as my frog. So I've just taken the part of it off, and now I have this poor frog has been like totally destroyed.
It's perfect backyard ornament.
It is perfect
It's right
backyard
there.
ornament.
It's half of a frog.
And I can come back in and manipulate any of these at any time, so I can scale up this one too. Maybe when I add a little
This is
more
what happens to
damage
the
there.
frog after his son gets a hold of it.
That's right. That's right.
He just
This is the
Broken
result.
yard art.
Yeah,
The
this is
broken
the
yard
result.
So once again, this is just in the preview mode. So if I get out of live Boolean, you can see it looks like this.
Perfect.
But I can transform this into true geometry. Now, I can also, you see here that I just had this model with sculpting detail. And then in the result before with the fan blade, if you noticed, you may saw some polygrouping getting transferred over in that make Boolean process as well. But I can also transfer over any poly paint that's applied to the model. So here I have some poly paint applied to these Dynamesh tools. So my frog has a texture on it, and then using the vertices on the mesh, and it also has a Skin Shade 4 matte cap applied to those vertices as well. And then each of these concrete blocks just have this poly skin applied to it with no color information. So I can even paint my Dynamesh models in poly paint and then have those colors transfer over to my final model. So once again, go to the tool palette. I'm going to go down to the subtool area here. I'm going to find this Boolean tab here, and I'm just going to click Make Boolean Mesh. And even with these millions of polygons on the mesh here, you're going to see how fast this process is. And once again, it's going to take the topology I have, it's going to hold that topology, and it's only going to change the topology on the resulting mesh where those intersections happen. So you can see in seconds there, it has been done processing. And if I come up here, I now have a new tool that has been created. So this has now created a 1.3 million polygon version of the frog here. It's kept all the original topology. So this is the Dynamesh topology on the frog, the Dynamesh damage of those concrete areas, and then it's only changed the topology where those parts intersected. And as you can see, it's also transferred and held the poly painting that was on the mesh along with the different materials that were also on the meshes as well. So this is extremely, extremely
So nice.
powerful.
And
And the process is instant.
No more waiting.
So fast.
Yeah, so
so
fast.
fast.
I'm going to start placing bets on how long his Booleans take. $5 it takes 10
Well,
seconds.
well, listen, I've been doing a lot on my notebooks, and people are asking too. On my just MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM, I'm getting really fast.
Still
great
quick.
results. Yeah, it's still super
yeah,
quick.
definitely.
Yeah.
So now I got some more stuff to show here. So I've got another model.
Wait, you have more?
I got more.
Okay.
A little bit more. A little more. A little more.
I told you we should have brought popcorn.
So here is another mesh here. And this may be scan data from my backyard.
Is it? No. No, it couldn't be.
So once again, another high
Now I'm
polygon model
intrigued
here.
at what you have in your backyard. You've got a frog.
I've got a frog,
You got the head.
the Buddha head.
The
Yep.
Buddha head.
So this is another high poly Dynamesh subtool. So we're looking at 4.3 million polygons. If I zoom in here and turn on my poly frames, you can see how crazy detailed this is. And I'm going to zoom back a little bit here, and I just have another tool appended to the scene that I'm going to turn on. And this is just a simple box model here that has had some subdivisions applied, so it's looking like this. Now, not only can you use the live Boolean system with dynamic subdivision, Z-modeler topology, Dynamesh models, but you can also use it with other operations in ZBrush, such as the array mesh functionality. So this tool here, I just have set up as this single tool, and I'm going to navigate down here to the array mesh tab and open this up. Now, array mesh is going to allow you to take a single object in ZBrush and then perform an array function, which will allow you to translate this form in multiple shapes and designs, and then you get that instanced part across all that area of the translation. So I'm going to turn on the array mesh here and just activate it. Now, you're not going to see much of a change right now. I've set up a few options down here at the bottom, and I can come through now and just change this repeat, and it's going to take this tool, this single object here, and it's now going to repeat it across this curve that I set up. So you can see as I scale up and down in this, I'm able to generate this array effect. Now this, once again, is a process in ZBrush that is another dynamic one. So at any time I can change the functionality over here. I can even modify the existing part. So since it's taking this original part right here and then replicating it around multiple times, I can switch to, say, the Gizmo 3D here, and I can scale that part up and down, and I can manipulate it, and it's going to manipulate across all those array parts. So what I'm going to do is, with this setup like this, I'm going to go back to my subtool palette here, and I'm now going to turn this into a subtractive form. So I'm going to click the subtractive option here, and now I'm getting this effect. So this is generating an effect now that's very similar to, say, MC Escher's bond of union or rind images. And if you guys are unfamiliar with that, I can just pull up a quick image
Bond
that
of
for you.
union. What's
Bond
the
of
chance?
there you
union.
go.
Yeah,
What's
very
the chance?
appropriate for the live
Very
Boolean system.
appropriate.
So this was a piece of artwork done by MC Escher, and so you can now create things like this with just this array mesh. So since this was a array mesh as well, I can now configure this. So even with the live Boolean preview on, I can come through and change the repeats and start generating different effects
like
on
this.
this.
It's
Like, so
great.
turning it up and down.
It's just cool to watch.
I can also just move this, and this is just going to move the array in space. So if I come over here and click this, I can start positioning this up and down to determine where I want this array effect to happen. I can also scale this up and down, so if I want it to be thinner or thicker, I can change that on the fly as well. So a lot of creativity and a lot of functionality you can do with just the existing features inside of ZBrush, such as array mesh and Dynamesh models, and just using this live Boolean system to just create and explore different shapes and designs. Now, once again, after you have this done, it's still in preview mode. So let's say I want to 3D print this out. So once again, I can just make this into true geometry. So I couldn't just make the mesh itself, so I wanted to add, let's show that colorize option again. So here I have some colors applied to this as well.
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure.
This is the pieces in bright red.
So the array mesh is the red areas that's affecting the model, and then the other coloring on here is from the original Dynamesh topology. I can now go back to that tool palette, go down to the Boolean area here, and just click this Make Boolean Mesh. Once again, this is going to process this. We're looking at another 4 million polygons on C here.
I want to know, are you going to print this and put this in your backyard?
I may. It may hang from a tree. I'll just spin
Well,
it in the
that's
wind.
actually
great
a pretty
idea.
good idea.
Yeah.
You can do like a bunch of chimes of different
Bunch of
ones.
chimes.
Should
So,
do your since you're into scanning, you might as well just scan your family members.
Everybody.
And
Just
make
put them in the
everybody
trees
in the back. Why
Arms and
not?
legs.
Why not?
Don't move, Leo. Don't move.
So that's done, right? So now if I come here and select the new tool, this is the resulting mesh I'm getting. So it's taking those objects, converting them to geometry, and now I have this as a result. I can now send this out to be 3D printed. So another huge thing using even with array mesh that you have inside of ZBrush to just create and design different elements. Now, next thing I'm going to get into here is, we talked about the Dynamesh, we talked about using it with dynamic subdivision, we talked about using it with array. Now I want to talk about using it with IMM parts. So I'm going to open Lightbox here again, and I have another file I'm going to load in here. Just load this up. So this is another quick example of a model that I was creating inside of 4R8. So this is a model that consists of multiple Dynamesh parts. So I took all these shapes, I extruded them out from an original shape, and then just started moving them around, and they're all pretty much Dynamesh. So if I turn on my polyframes here and just cycle through these guys, you can see these are all different Dynameshed parts on the mesh here. Now, when I was working on this, I started messing with the forms, and then I wanted to, describe some of the more detailed areas on the meshes. So I took, say, the dam standard brush and started cutting in some lines, because I just wanted to see where I was going to go with my design here. And I didn't want, to commit fully to the silhouette yet, but I just wanted to see where these edges were going to fall, and maybe add some little details, and just see what it looks like. The issue I ran into at this point was that I didn't really want to take my Dynamesh model to extremely dense mesh. So right now we're at 438 polygons. And I didn't really want to take this up to, say, millions of polys, because I wasn't quite done with the form. So I could go through and now use insert meshes with this Boolean system to add some of these shapes and designs.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that scan data?
It's not, this might be.
Yeah. And it's you?
Technology.
And it's you.
It is me.
And I would like to point out how many people think that helmet looks like an insect head. I'm just saying.
I mean, it's
Let me
like an
finish it.
insect
No,
helmet,
I'm just saying. I'm just trying to keep the backyard theme going here.
It's an insect from his backyard. Is that
We're
what
in
you're
the
saying?
woods. We're in the
Sand
woods.
a bug and
Yes,
We're in the
that's what I'm
woods.
saying.
listen.
It's one of the aliens we're beaming the broadcast to in
All
the
right.
face.
Prove it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So before I show you the Boolean function with this IMM brush, I want to talk about quickly another addition to the IMM features inside of ZBrush. So I'm going to go to the brush palette here and open this up, and I'm going to locate the IMM model kit brush. So this was a brush that shipped with 4R7, and if I click this, the first thing you may notice, if you're already an existing user of ZBrush, is that up at the top here, I now have these IMM parts displayed like this. So now, not only can you press the M key to expose these different parts on your brush, but you can also come to this IMM selector and select your parts that are contained in the brush this way. So I can come through and scroll these back and forth and maybe find one of these little objects here and select it. Then I come across my model and now say drag that out. Let me get to my tool here. And as long as I don't have subdivisions on it, I can drag that out on the surface of my mesh there. Just turn off live Boolean here for a second. And now I can switch to the gizmo and manipulate this. So I can add this part here. Then maybe I want to add another part, so I come here, select another one, drag that out over here, and just come through and select your subtools like this. Now, in addition to just selecting it, if you have the Gizmo 3D active and you have the manipulator active on your model, you're going to be able to replace that object in your scene. So if I decided I want to scale this up, maybe embed it a little bit more, but then I'm not really happy with this, like maybe I want to see what another part would look like here. So instead of redrawing this out or repositioning on it, as long as I have this Gizmo 3D active and I come up here and click, it's now going to allow me to cycle through these parts. So now I can cycle through these and find a shape that maybe fits a little bit better for what I'm going for.
I like to call it the Bob Ross viewer.
The Bob Ross viewer?
Personally. Because
So let's say I'm going to find, say,
happy
maybe
mistakes.
this shape here, this shape here.
Yeah.
And I can select that one, and now I can say move this out a little bit so it fits like there. And then say, maybe I want to combine another IMM part with this one. So I can hold down Control, and using the gizmo and one of the move operations, I can duplicate that part. And then it's going to now look at any part that's unmasked. And if I click again, it's going now to replace that with the new part at the top. So now I can move this in, do something like this, position it down. And so you can see I can start layering the building style of using IMMs now. So I can start configuring these. So I can change it on the fly. I can duplicate it off. I can then grab another part. So maybe I want this screw head here. Now see where that goes, move it back into place, position it in, and just start tailoring these on the fly with this IMM. So instead of drawing these out multiple times or trying to reposition them, I can just switch to the gizmo, swap to a new one, clone it, do all sorts of things, and start getting these results. So another feature that I ran into when using this new IMM selector and the IMM brush is that not only can I just have these parts being generated in a positive fashion, but if I have live Boolean active and I have a tool that's set to subtractive, it's going to take these parts and then use them as subtractive elements on my model. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm just going to append in a quick cube here. So I'm going to grab, say, this Cube 3D here and just append this in. And then I'm going to just zoom out a little bit and just scale this down. So I'm going to select the scale gizmo here. And I'm just going to scale it so it's in the middle of my model. If I turn on transparency, you can see where this is.
Hold that transparency for a moment because of the stream, so that people can see what you're doing.
So now I've just placed this cube in the center of my mesh. And basically I'm doing this so I can set the subtool as subtraction. Later on I can delete this cube when it's not needed. So now that I turned off the transparency there, I'm now going to switch to another brush. So I'm going to go into the draw mode here. I'm going to go to the brush palette. I'm going to select the IMM Boolean brush. Select this. This one is a new brush that's been added to the default installation that has all these individual parts you can play with. So I'm going to come up here and say select this part here. Now by default, this tool right now is still set as that union result. So if I drag this out on my mesh, you see I'm just going to get that same effect that I was having happen with the other IMM brush. So I'm not seeing any change. But if I set this now to subtractive and activate the live Boolean system, it's going to now subtract that part out of the mesh. So now I can start drawing these IMM parts out on the fly, and you're going to see them start cutting into the shape. Now once again, this is giving me the ability to add all these individual parts to my mesh, but not have a high density model underneath it. So these are still Dynamesh models. I can still change the form, still move it around, but it's also, they're not Dynamesh models that are millions and millions of polygons. So since the Boolean is going to generate that detail, I don't need to tessellate that mesh up all that much. So I'm just going to undo this quick and show one of these IMM parts that's even more powerful. So here's one here that I call a ball radar. I'm going to turn my symmetry on here as well. And I'm just going to drag this out, and now I'm going to get this shape on my mesh. And I can even activate dynamic subdivision on that.
Well, that was new what you just did too.
You did, the dynamic
So
subdivision.
now dynamic subdivs will ask you
before applying it.
Yes.
So that was another
request from the user base.
So now I'm taking these Booleans, and I can even generate complex designs like this. And this is all using the Boolean process.
Come on, dude. It's even more an insect head.
It's not an insect, Paul.
The chat says otherwise.
Oh man, well, I'll go with the chat.
Oh,
I
yeah.
trust the
Okay,
chat.
what
I
are
don't know
the-
about you.
What's the general
feeling that
consensus?
It's definitely a mech insect, and they're also now asking, how many helmets do you have? Are
Lots
these helmets in the backyard?
It could
They're
be
all
in the
lined
backyard.
up in the back.
I think we're going to start, we should do like a thread some point, maybe in a month, where just there's an image of your backyard, and people have to, it's like finding Waldo. Find Joseph's frog, find Joseph's
This
We could do,
reminds
we
me
could
of
do a contest.
Beetleborgs.
What is in the backyard?
beetle. Yeah,
What is in the-
Joseph's
what's in the backyard?
Would you just put like the silhouette outline like the old
Yes.
highlight books?
And fill it out. So using this process here, I was able to take these Booleans, and I just have another tool here that I can quickly just turn on. And you'll see that this is the result I ended up with. So once again, these are all still in this additive process. So I can go through and select these different elements and change them on the fly. And it's going to allow me to configure my silhouette and design, and all those Booleans are still going to hold. Now, this is still in live Boolean. So if I turn this off, you can see this is what I'm getting on my model here. So a lot of intersecting stuff.
That looks cool.
So let's say I want to take this and turn this to geometry now. Once again, go to the tool palette, go down to the Boolean tab under subtool. Make sure you have live Boolean on. I use a lot of dynamic subdivision on this one, so I'm going to activate that, and now I'm going to click Make Boolean Mesh. So it's once again is going to process extremely fast, and it's going to give me a result here in a mere matter of seconds.
13 seconds.
13 seconds.
13 seconds, you're
Yeah.
saying? I think it would be longer than that. But it is pretty impressive how, even with dense
know.
dense meshes, I did something with like 50 million and 40 million,
Yep.
Yeah.
and I was getting results in less than 10 seconds.
What I love about this is you can set up multiple Booleans and run all of those based on the chains and just propagate all of
Process
that
them
at
all.
once. Do it all, so you don't have to worry about that till the end,
Yeah.
which is great.
So here we have the resulting mesh here. And you can see we're at 1.8 million polygons for this from here. And if I turn on my poly frames and say turn off my line here, you can see it's held all those polygroups from my original tools as well. So all these different main parts here were all those separate subtools in my original file. And then all the Booleans came through and held their polygrouping as well. So this is extremely handy for breaking meshes up maybe after you're done with them. And you can see all the result processed. And if I turn my lines on here, you can see that the changes in the topology only happened at the areas of intersection, and it's held the original topology on the meshes in the Boolean process. You can see the Dynamesh models, and then you can see I have some Z-modeler topology on a lot of these guys. And you see it's all kept that process. So really, really awesome. And if you go back and forth between these two here, you're not going to see any change. So it's kept it exact, held all those details. So IMM exploration with the live Boolean. But wait, there's more.
There's more.
There's more. So I'm going to go back in Lightbox again, and I'm going to open up, say, this file here. So here I have a file here that's another Dynamesh model. And if I zoom in on this, you can see fairly dense as well. So another dense model, 1.4 million polygons. And for this one here, I was experimenting with some 3D printing stuff and using live Booleans, which is another excellent outlet for this tool, because you're able to come through and slice up models, cut them up, and generate these effects in a dynamic way, so you can make changes on your meshes and not really have them be solidified or fully commit to them. So with when I was playing with this, I started making these shapes. So if I turn my polyframes on here, you can see I have something like this. So another mesh that was made with the Z-modeler brush, and you can see it has some dynamic subdivision applied along with some creasing. So I have something like that, and then I have something like this, and then I have something like this.
A little bit of this,
A little bit of this,
a little bit of that.
So you guys may be getting a hint of where I'm going with this, right? So I'm going to go back to my model here. And I'm just going to turn off my poly frames and have the live Boolean on. But right now I only have one single subtool, so I'm not getting a result. I'm not seeing any change here. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click Append, and I'm just going to append in that part I just showed you. So this part right here. Now I'm going to select that one, switch to the Gizmo 3D. I'm going to move it out in space so you guys can see this. So this is what it looks like here. Scale it up a little bit. So I have something like this. Now I'm going to take this part. I'm going to rotate my model to the side here, maybe the front a little bit. I'm just going to position it somewhere here, maybe rotate it down a little. Maybe rotate it in just a little bit here, maybe rotate this. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to activate the subtraction mode. So just clicking this button. Now, as you can see, as I'm doing this, I'm getting a dynamic effect applied to this. And if I rotate around the model here, let me turn off the gizmo, you can see that I've just created a toy joint. Now, this is all fully dynamic, so I can come in and customize this. So I can scale this up and down, fix where this goes, rotate it around, change this on the fly. I can even go back to my original model and sculpt on this. So say I added this joint. It looks good, and now I want to take it and say sculpt a little more details on it and come back to that Dynamesh model and sculpt. I can even sculpt across the Boolean area, and it's still going to respect that Boolean process, but allow me to configure my mesh a little bit stronger. So using just that single tool, I've now taken the time that it would have taken me normally to come through and separate those meshes, generate the keying, generate the pin in a mere matter of seconds. So I'm going to go to a mesh that has a little more of this done, so I'm going to select this one here. So I've added a few more of these to the mesh here, and this is what I have. So I have some leg joints, which are these files. I've used mirror and weld to get these across. I've got some arm joints that are these files. And then I have these little pop swivel pieces. That was that other tool that was there. And these were all
What
just
did you call them? Pop
swivel.
swivels.
Okay.
There's probably a more technical term. That's what I'm calling
No,
it.
I just want to make
Pop
sure I
swivel
heard
works. Pop swivel.
It's like a Jell-O
it. I knew there was a song for it.
So now I have this, all my live Booleans on, and I want to now turn this in geometry. So once again, I'm going to go to the tool palette here, I'm going to go to the Make Mullion Mesh button, keep my dynamic subdivision on since I had these active on those subtractive forms, and I'm going to click Make Boolean Mesh. So once again, using the live Boolean system here to set up toy joints for articulated figures, keying your models, maybe you want to print larger than your bed size allows on your 3D printer, you can come through and just do all this process to set them up. And you can see, once again, in a mere matter of seconds, I have a new resulting mesh that looks like this. Now, I have a model, the resulting mesh here. You can see these are all the processes that came across. So it's held all the original topology. It's only changed in the areas where the intersections happened. It's also held all the polygroups from the original meshes. So I had one polygroup on my main model, and then all my joints were separate polygroups, so it's held all those. Now, I've got a model that I've just gone through and applied a little bit of grouping to, and then group split it, so you can see the final result of this. So here we have the mesh here. And just give a better example of what these joints look like when they're done, I can now start moving these. I can zoom out my mesh here. And you can see I have all these parts, and all these keys have been created. So you can see this is coming through and generating this effect. So I can come through and just now separate my mesh out, send it to print, and it's done. And these are all separate pieces.
I hope those
And it was
artists
done.
working in production for toys are watching, because this
yeah.
is
Oh no,
huge.
this is going crazy right now in the chat for what people are saying.
Yeah, and it's instantaneous. Like, it's extremely fast.
Yeah, I've printed so much stuff from this with articulation and everything. It's been
It's just done.
perfect.
Yeah.
Done.
Now, in addition to just using this for printing, we've also added some other functionality to ZBrush here. So we've added a new plugin. So I'm going to click over here and just going to select another tool here. So the leg joint here that is isolated out. Now, we know that you guys, want to do 3D printing, and so it's kind of expensive sometimes to buy your own 3D printer. So we've teamed up with Sculpteo, and we've created a plugin that will allow you to send models to Sculpteo with a single click, with color or without color, and then you can use their printers to print. So this is extremely handy to use. Set up your models in ZBrush with the live booleans, and then you come to Sculpteo, this plugin right here, send it to Sculpteo. It's going to send the model and then give you the result. So I'm just going to go through this process really quick to send. So it's very easy. Just come and click this button here. You're going to get a little dialog that's going to pop up, and you can log in with an existing account, or you can even upload the file as an anonymous user. So I'm just going to upload as anonymous. I'm just going to click no here. And this is now going to take your mesh and transfer this data to Sculpteo. Now, while this is sending, I just want to show you an example here. So here I have a part here that was created inside of ZBrush using the live Boolean system. And this is the knee joint here with its articulation. So you can see I just took that one Boolean part. I've then generated it with the live Boolean on my mesh. And now I have this as a result. And I can bend this and use this in figures. So awesome, awesome, awesome stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to point out too. You brought up the login. So we've made this because maybe there are people in companies or people that are sharing a computer. So we've made it so you can actually wipe out your login. Someone else can log in on the exact same computer, send the print, and it will go straight to your login. So again, you can send it to Sculpteo as like Joseph did as an anonymous user because he didn't sign into his account. Or if you sign in your account, it'll go straight to your account. And then if I decide to print something on the same computer that Joseph's doing, I can clear his account information, sign into my account information, and then it'll go to my account. So we try to make this as streamlined as possible for you going to Sculpteo.
And so there we have the mesh that has been transferred to Sculpteo. So it just sent it right now, and you can see it's in their preview there, and I can send it to review and check out and get this model printed out through them. So really, really awesome application there for that. Now, in addition to this, I've been experimenting with even more 3D printing, as always. So I'm going to come over here and have another file here, just quickly, that I want to select. So here we have the Buddha head again. And one other thing that's really big with 3D printing is definitely splitting up to multiple parts, the toy articulation. But you also want to come through and start hollowing mesh surfaces out. So to save on the cost of material that's required to print the thing, you can come through and apply hollowing functionalities. So using the live Boolean system is another great way to do this and preview the thickness of your model on the fly. So with this subtool here, I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to the Duplicate tab and just create a new version of this. I'm going to make sure this is a Dynamesh model. So I'm going to come through here, go to the Dynamesh tab. I'm going to set my resolution to say something around 128, and hit enter, and then I'm going to click Dynamesh. And this is going to now generate a little lighter version of this model here. Now I'm just going to scale this down. So I'm going to switch to the Move gizmo. I'm going to scale this down a little bit. And turn solo off. I'm going to turn on transparency so you can see how that's affecting the mesh currently. Scale it up a little bit more through there. So now I have my original tool here, and I have this part that's scaled down, a little lighter Dynamesh there, and I'm going to set this to subtractive. So now I'm taking my original model, and I'm subtracting that inner part out. Well now, since that other secondary subtool there is fully engulfed in my main model, I'm not going to see a change here. But I can come over here and say append in now a cube 3D object. So taking another primitive, appending this in, I can now select this object. I'm just going to move it down here to the bottom of my statue here. And now I'm going to turn on subtractive. And now, as I move this cube up into the model here, you'll see it's going to expose that thickness. So I can just click and drag this and see this effect on my mesh. Now once again, this is a dynamic effect, so I can come through and check all these areas. Now let's say I scroll to say a part like this, and I'm looking at the thickness along the walls here, and I decide, oh, this part right through here is a little bit too thin. So I can go back to that subtool that I'm using to generate this inner result here. I can switch to say the move brush, give me a little larger draw size here, and I come through and I can manipulate that subtool with the live boolean still applied, and I can now fix that thin area. So I can come through and do that, fix this area up. I can now switch back to my cube, go back to my gizmo, move it up a little bit more, looking for another thin area on the mesh there. Let's see if I can find any here. All these are looking pretty thick right now. There's one. I can switch back to that boolean again, go back to, say, the clay buildup brush this time, and I come in and start sculpting this out. Maybe add a little thickness with that, doing a little smoothing, thickness, smoothing. And so you can see the power of this functionality. So extremely, extremely powerful.
And yes, that will be going in your backyard.
Yes, and I could put.
We've established that it's all
in
going in the backyard, right?
Well, there's themes to each one of our presentations.
Now there's one more thing. I got, well, two more things, because I did forget to mention one thing that I wanted.
Sure,
to,
just go for 5 more hours, Strauss.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something I didn't get to yet. So.
I don't think anybody would be upset, would they?
No, I don't think
You
anybody
guys
will
wouldn't be
care.
upset, right?
All right, so when I was talking about the gizmo earlier, I totally left out a part here that I want to hit on. So I'm going to have to load this file really
Go
quick.
ahead. Go
So
ahead.
I'm just going to do this really quick,
should
because
do it.
I did want to show this, and it's pretty amazing. And then I'm going to go back to one last thing. So I got some
Okay,
more. Sorry.
all right.
Sorry,
All right.
viewers.
No,
Sorry.
come on, let's go. We're having
viewers.
fun. That's the point of this.
All right, so the Gizmo 3D, you guys have seen this, so I demoed this a little second ago. And with this...
A little second ago?
A little
No.
second ago.
No.
That's the new phrase. Put it on there,
Go.
hashtag little seconds.
Big
ago.
seconds and little
Yeah.
seconds.
Joseph's presentation, hashtag little seconds.
Little seconds.
Kyle liked that one.
Kyle's laughing. We're
You get a
good.
chuckle out of Kyle.
You
know.
get a chuckle out of
You laugh
Kyle.
at everything.
You might be going somewhere.
All right, so the Gizmo 3D, we saw had functionality where it was moving around, moving multiple subtools. In addition to this, we can also customize our Gizmo 3D. And so here in the preferences palette, we have the ability to change some of the preferences for this. So if it's too small, you can change the size. You also have the ability to load in custom gizmos. Now, 4R8, we've had a few of these that are already in here. So if I click this next gizmo here, you can see I'm going to start cycling through these.
Oh,
Now,
well,
this is Paul's
whoa.
favorite.
Pandora's box. I
Pandora's
seriously
box.
thought Pinhead was going to jump out of the... This is Joseph's, by the way. This is his creation.
I like it. I like it.
You know what the best thing is? That
Yes.
since these are loaded in a ZBrush, whenever I come across your machine and you're not at your desk, I change
Ooh.
your manipulator to this. And you come
You opened a
back.
can
it's
of worms, my
Pandora's
friend.
box.
You opened up Pandora's box.
Pandora's box.
Oh.
Opened it. Yeah.
So as you can see, you can customize your gizmos as well.
My ZBrush has a password, so you can't get in.
Okay.
Lies.
Okay. Sure it
Lies.
does, Paul.
So we had, the ability to do this, and some of our beta testers, specifically Thomas Whittlebach, came through and made his own custom gizmo. And so this is a gizmo by Thomas Whittlebach.
Insane.
And if I zoom in here, you can just see how crazy you can take these gizmos.
Like Graspus, this is his gizmo that
yes,
he's using.
this is it. It's
to
skulls on top of
rotate,
skulls
or
on top
move.
of bones.
Yeah. You wouldn't expect anything less from Thomas.
No.
Nope.
And once again,
I like
we have
the
the
hands.
ability to customize
Yeah.
the gizmo even to this level. So this is an insane gizmo. Now if I go back to my truck here and I open up this tab again, I can now cycle. We're back in the move mode here. There's some more default ones. And you'll see here that as I cycle through these, I'm going to get to Thomas's gizmo.
There it is.
Yep.
Let's just make this a little bit bigger here.
Oh.
And all the functionality of the gizmo is in this gizmo, but now it looks like this.
This one still has
So I
the
can
setting.
I can still move
So
move
cool.
screen, rotate around, move,
Yeah,
scale.
You can do whatever you want. So if you don't like
You
any
can
of the gizmos,
sculpt
come
and model your
build
own
Own
gizmo.
gizmo.
Yeah,
Own
using
gizmo.
ZBrush.
I've had all kinds of ideas after I saw Thomas's.
Yeah, and this one's amazing. It was
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Well,
ones.
I think the first one you did, but didn't you just take the dog and make the head be a scale?
Yeah,
and the
you can do
legs
that too.
a-
Dog
Any primitive.
gizmo?
Yep, yep.
You
dog
just
Doge
literally
gizmo,
was
if
just a
you will.
dog.
But so I missed that when I was showing the truck, so I had to bump that real quick. I
Oh,
got one last
absolutely.
thing. One
Absolutely.
last thing.
Take your time.
And then we'll go back to find out who won those contests.
Yeah, we got to find
Oh,
out.
yep.
When. By the way, while you're bringing that up, when we ask the questions again, we'll be using our Twitter account. So I'll be asking a question, and then you guys are going to be using Twitter, and you're going to give the answer and hashtag ZBrush 4R8
Hashtag.
because it's being asked in the country. Don't confuse them.
Guys,
Again,
no.
don't listen to
One-
Solomon.
one
Don't listen to
hashtag.
Solomon. You're going to
I
give the
mean-
answer, and then you're going to do hashtag ZBrush 4R8. We'll be giving away
ZBrush 4R8. Yes,
Spelled out.
exactly.
Spelled out.
spelled out. Mike's making it even more.
All
Yeah,
right, so
spelled out that
last
way.
thing I want to show here. So a lot of 3D printing stuff I usually experiment with, and this is another example of what I was using the live boolean system for, and it's amazing. So this is a matrix mold. So a matrix mold is a mold that usually has a rubber part that is then surrounded by a thicker rigid shell. So I was able to use the boolean system with an original part and create these shapes with it. So I could come through and tailor my shapes to see, well, how thick would that rubber area be? How thick would this outer shell be? Do I have enough drainage holes? Do I have areas to put the locking things in with, say, the bolts and the screws? Like, you can do this all on the fly without ever having to waste material. So I can look at this and see how it works and everything. Now, after this was done, of course, I printed this out. And for the different parts here, I wanted to use two forms of printing. So I used FDM and also SLA. And let me just zoom this in quick so you guys can see this here. Scale this down a little bit. So here is the molds in real life, right? So I've taken the molds here and I've printed them out. So you can see the ones in blue were done on a MakerBot. And then I made some shell shapes here that were done on the Form 2. And then I even did some where I poured that inner rubber material into the shells on the 3D printed forms themselves. So very, very awesome thing here, and you can turn this into traditional processes, and now I can mold and cast these things. And it took all the guesswork out of what my final result is going to look like because I could preview it all in ZBrush before I did this. So awesome, awesome stuff.
And you're going to be making these pigs available for people.
Eventually.
Eventually.
It's still a long, drawn-out project.
Right.
It'll happen someday.
All right.
All right, so that's all I got, Paul. So back to you guys.
Oh boy! All right, so just a little quick preview here. We're giving away some more swag. Yes, the good old-fashioned summer
Here, I'll
sweatshirt.
hold this one up.
There you go.
There you go.
The,
Yeah, there you go.
the dad joke hat,
Perfect.
and
Rally hat.
everybody's favorite, the black T-shirt.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so are we gonna pick this?
Yeah, we've already got a winner for this one, so let's find out who our winner is again. So the past winner was Jess Thompson, aka Spiritex from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Ooh,
Wow. All right. Congratulations, Jess. So we're going to give away another one of these now. So again, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to just put the answer and then hashtag ZBrush 4R8. And we're only using Twitter. So I know people are putting in the chats. We can only monitor one thing at a time, unfortunately, for something like this. So we're using our Twitter account to do that, like we've always done for our ZBrush Summits, which again, this year's is going to be October 5th through the 8th. By the way, we've already got all presenters lined up, so that's going to be announced.
It's gonna be a good year.
Oh boy!
Keeps getting bigger.
I'm just saying some big stuff again this year. So if you
Big
can make it to
seconds.
that event, come physically to that event.
Lots of big seconds, not small seconds.
Yeah, it makes a change. So
Definitely.
here's your next question for the next swag package. Okay, what new ZBrush 4R8 feature allows you to perform union, subtract, and/or intersect? Again, what new ZBrush 4R8 feature allows you to perform union, subtract, and/or intersect? Give us your answer, hashtag ZBrush 4R8 in Twitter. We're now going to make a swap. I'm going to go next and give me like 30 seconds to get myself situated.
I left you a present gizmo, too.
Thanks, great.
All right. 10 seconds. Just have to pee.
It's going to be longer than that. We're bantering right now, correct?
Banter, yes,
oh man,
absolutely.
look at this. I got the couch seat now. Now I can see what you guys are saying. There we go. You should see how long it takes Paul to set up his machine here. I did make sure that he had the Pandora's box gizmo.
That's not cool.
Just so you all know, Pandora's box has been opened. So
I don't.
The funny thing is that Saul probably still has his mic on.
Probably. Although they can turn him down over here.
They can turn him down,
individually, So it's not that big of a deal, but it could be a funny joke if it actually did happen. So I'm with you on that one. So definitely now that Mr. Druss is on the computer, let him know what you thought about that presentation. I'm sure he would like to know.
I've got some coffee now. It's excellent over here.
Now you've got coffee.
Now I've got coffee.
Now you're all set and ready to go, you're saying, right? So just give me a couple seconds here. I'm just going to set up myself here, and then definitely going to get rid of Joseph's gizmo. Just driving me crazy.
That's the Pandora's box.
No,
you love it.
no,
you love it. You can click the reset button. Just click the reset.
We don't want it. I'm going to stick with old default. Okay, that's what I'm going with, and that's what I'm going to stick with. All right, so. This has been a really fun event. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I really appreciate all the comments coming through. Keep them coming. We're monitoring different things right now. We're monitoring. Monitor the monitor. All right. So
Saul's back.
Saul's back. He's in his seat. We heard everything you just did, by the way. You have a microphone.
I'm muted. No, that's not true. Can't fool me, man.
All right. So my turn. So I want to continue highlighting some things that Joseph has done, but then go into even more features here that we have in 4R8. So I decided to take this Lockheed Martin piece, which is a radar sensor. So this is the item up here. So you can see right here, this is with live Boolean off. Because some of the stuff that's coming through the chat, I just want to highlight where this is again. So right here along the top here, I'm going to hold that for a second. There's the live Boolean button here. So again, I want to reiterate, this is about rendering. It's about non-destructive systems. So we're not actually even generating the mesh right now. We're giving you what the mesh would look like if you did generate it. Okay?
Preview.
So this is actually going to be found in the render, and you have render booleans now. So this is where it's actually located in the UI. Then obviously, based upon the development of this and working with even the beta testers, having the nice button right there became very convenient. And of course, you can shortcut this. Something else I want to highlight that I saw coming through a lot is the UI. There has been adjustments to the UI. So you can see the various English on the various
multi-language.
The multi-language that we do support now. And because of this, the text does actually enlarge now in ZBrush. So when you go with a bigger button size, your text is actually going to enlarge as well. So I have a 4K monitor in my office, and now it's really nice to be able to enlarge that text on and still have the large, huge workspace. Really large workspace. Okay, so
various Englishes.
Yeah, various Englishes. Hey, you know what? Speaking of that, I can make a custom language if I want to. Okay, so I can make jibber jabber Paul language if I want.
Pig Latin.
Okay?
Pig Latin.
Whatever we want.
Piggy
we can
some
do.
Latin.
Yeah. So I want to take some time and talk about how I just got kind of to this piece and really hit home again some stuff with the gizmo and things that Joseph on, and really understand that this is kind of like it's artistic moving flow. So this piece is just made up of several subtools, which again I have various start menus that we have here. I want to look at just, well, how did I even start getting this various shape? So I'm going to switch to my handy dandy star here because everybody needs one, and we're going to throw our gizmo on.
Oh, you changed it.
Yeah. No Pandora's box. Okay.
Did you set it up?
Yeah, he gave me Pandora's box. Of course he did. So you've got a gear here. So I'm going to open that up, and you can see what we have. Along the top, we have interactive primitives, and along the bottom, that's right, there are deformers. So this, ironically, was like a question asked to me when I teach. Hey, are you guys ever going to have lattice deformers? Now you do. Okay. So I'm going to touch on these. But Solomon's definitely going to dive in deeper as well with his presentation about these deformers. I want to right now start with these primitives. So I don't know about the rest of you that are using ZBrush. I know myself and Joseph, when we're doing even hard surface stuff, we do a lot of starting with just a cube, a sphere. So this new system, I'm going to be able to pop in an actual shape. I'm going to turn on my polyframe so you guys can see what's happening here. You may have noticed some cones here floating. These cones are relating to your axes. So your green is your Y, your red's your X, right? So I'm going to be able to actually adjust now. So this is like using just the 3D shape. So you have capabilities to adjust these however you want on the fly. So there, okay? And what I'm going to do is I use this sphere to get my general shape. So I'm going to just take my masking and say I want the bottom on mask. So for those that are using ZBrush, you're probably used to doing this and then maybe doing a flip like that. Or if you were smarter, you would do something like this, right? Mask the top, okay? We're dealing with something very simple right now, which is my mind, okay?
I do that all the time. Sometimes
You do like
just
the
go,
bottom,
You
because
just go
that's-
and you're like, oh, I did the wrong one.
Yeah, this is because that's what you want to move. So
Yeah.
your mind goes, I'm going to mask that and inverse it,
Yeah.
right? So that's exactly how probably my mind will work a lot of times. So what we've added here, which may not seem like a big thing, but it's a workflow improvement. And I'm telling you, when we were developing this and I went back into class teaching 4R7, I found myself doing this literally every time. And in my head, I'm like, oh, wait, that's not there. Okay, so I'm going to hold Control, and instead now I'm going to hold the Alt key. So anything in the white box actually now is unmasked, and automatically the mask on the top works. And you're going to see when we start getting into deformers how this is even becoming a better advantage. So again, let me just do that one more time. Holding down Control. I'm holding over that, and then I'm just switching to the Alt key only and letting go. Now, why I'm doing that, I just want to highlight something. See, this is Paul going on his tangents. So when you're holding Control and you start drawing out your masking pen or something like this, and you have this box, you no longer have to hold the keyboard. As you can see here, I'm waving to you right now, right? And that allows me now to free my hand to just only hold Alt. So technically, I don't need to hold Control and Alt.
That's crazy talk.
If I don't want to do it. It comes in
crazy
handy.
talk.
All right, let's move on. So what I'm doing is I want to switch to my gizmo, okay? And just like the transpose, I can hold Control and extrude down, and then there you go. I'm getting that starting piece that I'm looking for. So I'm going to clear my mask, and let's go ahead and take a look at now the flatten deformation. So we have this piece, and you can see there's these orange cones. All this is going to do is if I grab this bottom cone and start pulling it up, you can see it starts to flatten the surface. So for those of you that are ZBrush users right now in the stream, this is probably similar to looking at what the clip brush is going to do, right? So you have now this capability, and Solomon's even going to show more about this where it comes in advantage having it on the gizmo. Because think about it, it's using the gizmo, so I can actually rotate the gizmo and have different results, okay? But what I want to do is kind of now combine that clip with maybe the slice, okay? So up here in this yellow little circle here, you can see as I scroll over it, at the bottom there where it's flat, it tells you what this is going to do, okay? So it's saying add a slice, change it to 1. Now you can see I've got nice clean geometry, and you see as I move up, triangles are being made, because we're actually now not only flattened, but slicing through. So then I can go right to there, and boom, I've got what I want. I can click on my little gear and say, yes, perfect. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so some of the questions were also coming up about the gizmo centering and things like that. You can actually center things. So I've masked again the top, and I can click this little Find Me, and you can see that gizmo is now sitting at the bottom of the unmasked portion. If I want to clear my mask and then click it, now the gizmo's sitting at the middle of that piece that I started to make. Okay? So I wanted to highlight that because I saw that coming through a lot with the questions. So let's continue going on here and developing and thinking about this. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this little guy because it's handy for me. And I'm going to say gear, okay? And I'm going to say, let's grab this furthest sphere.
And you just click the gear to go into that deformer menu.
You just click the gear. That's all you have to do is click that gear, and it pops up and gives you those primitives and then all your deformers right there. So now I have this shape with different cones. So these green cones are going to allow me to do this. So you can see how easy it is for me to start building this piece from Lockheed Martin. So I can say I want that one to be 24, and I can make this any number I want, or I can say I want that also to be to 24. I can play with my geometry spans through the X and through the Z. So this is pretty much all I did to get that general shape. And you can see I still have that piece down there. Now I'm going to say, hey, let's resize it. This is where things with the gizmo come in handy. So I'm going to turn on transparency so you can kind of see this, and I start sizing it down. So you can see it's sizing based upon where the gizmo is sitting right now. So I want it to kind of size based from the top. So this little lock thing that Joseph highlighted, I prefer using the shortcut, which is the Alt key. So if I'm holding the Alt key and I have gizmo on, I can actually move my gizmo anywhere I want, and then now it's at the top, right? And I let go of the Alt key, and you can see your lock is now locked.
Temporary unlock.
Temporary unlock, right? So you don't have to go actually here and unlock it. Go back and lock it.
That's what I say every time I unlock stuff. Oh, no.
Oh, why is my front door locked all the time? I just want
to hold the Alt key.
Right, so now where that gizmo is positioned, I can scale based upon that, and you can see it's scaling the way I would want it. So if I turn off transparency, that's pretty much where I want it sitting in space. So we're not done there, because a really fun workflow that I found with some of these pieces I'm going to be pulling up as we go through here is being able to use the gizmo in another way. So I'm going to go back and center this, and I'm going to hold control, and then I'm going to do this. That copies that piece I just made. So this is the same thing you have in the transpose line. So again, you still have a transpose line. So I'm just hitting the Y key to go back and forth, which you can see it's highlighting this new UI element up here on the top, okay? So you can see my gizmo also, it's kind of not sitting pretty. I'm gonna hold the Alt key and click reset, and now my gizmo is reset to be perfect in the world. Okay, so I can now start saying, you know what, let's put something else on the side here. Let's kind of go away from this thing now. Let's discover. Let's Bob Ross it. Okay, so I'm gonna push this where I want it to go and decide, all right, I want it to be there. You know what, let's center it, make sure I'm in the middle now, and say that, that looks good, but I don't want this same piece again. So let's change it up. Let's hit this and hit a ring instead. So now I got a ring sitting there. So we automatically replace the item that's not masked. That's very key. That one bigger portion is masked. The other piece wasn't. I'm going to do it again. So if you didn't get it, don't worry. So this is now giving me just even more freedom to adjust and play with this. And we have different spans. So this is your coverage. Okay, you have all the way down to a triangle. It's really, it's your world. Right? So you can, well, this is always a fun one to watch. Look into my eyes. You want to use 4R8.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to continue that workflow, switching back to my gizmo. Again, I'm holding the control key, clicking on this, and then notice the size of the duplicated one. It's identical. So what's great is if I want this same identical piece, let's say a cylinder 3D, you can see that cylinder is actually popping in at the exact same size as your torus. So I can now say, well, how many spans? I want it smoother. Do I need any this way? And, which I found very convenient, is this. Yeah, throwing a little hole in there, switching back to gizmo, and then putting this where I want to. And then remember, I got a gizmo, so I can change my size here. So this created for me a really fast workflow to, bam, just get a lot of primitives out, get a lot of general shapes out, and start going more complex as I moved on. Okay, something else that I want to show with the gizmo is, so this piece, because I know this was brought up, okay, again, right now I'm in live Boolean mode, okay, and I kind of want to move this around and maybe make some adjustments. In fact, when I made this, I started with just this simple piece. I'm going to go to solo mode so you can see my geometry. I use ZModeler to build this, okay, and I'm like, oh, I want to make an inner shell for this because that's what they would have in real life. So I just duplicated this, and I have my inner shell down here. So you can see this is an actual subtract, and these spans is what's giving me these little spanning holes here, right? So when I made this, I didn't have the proportions correct, because I pretty much do that every single time. So the new mode that we have that saved my life, because even when I was adding all these screws on, I was like, oh, I want to move some more things around, is this item that Joseph was talking about with the transpose select subtools. So I'm just going to center this again by, again, I'm going to hit that little finder, which is like that map pinning thing that you maybe you've seen in Google Maps, right? I guess that would be this.
It goes right to your backyard?
Goes right to Joseph's backyard.
Oh, yeah, right back to
By the way,
Joseph.
this is not in Joseph's backyard. Okay. So
There were some questions if it was in your backyard.
no, it's not. But
I don't know if I believe that. That sounds like it was just cover up.
I was starting to print it, and like many projects that I've printed out, I printed and it's sitting at a desk. And
It's in progress.
Someday they'll be finished.
not together. And I look and I go, someday I'll finish that off. Okay, we all have that as artists, I'm sure. So I'm going to put myself in solo mode. And what I really want to highlight, what gave me some freedom here, I want to adjust that purple part. I want it to be actually taller. So we have a problem here. If I just only adjust this piece, everything else is off now. All the screws are sitting in the wrong spot. All the cut lining I'm doing is sitting in the wrong spot. So I'm going to take advantage of doing maybe some masking. So I'm going to put a mask here on this piece. Let's go down. I'm going to hit the down arrow key because that'll automatically select my next subtool. It's just something I like to do. So these are screws, which just like Joseph showed, I built them opposite, so as a negative. So because I'm using them as a subtract, so I built them so that when they go in, I immediately see the screw head happening on my surface. So I'm going to say, you know what, the bottom ones, let's mask those off. I want those to stay where they're at. Let's go to the next piece. Okay, these are the screws way down at the bottom. Those are fine. I don't care about those. Oh, this is that side piece that's making my cut line. Let's go ahead and mask that off up to this point, let's say. Here's another piece. Okay, this is actually what's making my cut. I'm going to show you how I actually got to this point, because looking at this, it looks like a really bad loaf of bread that's purple and rotten. It literally just, I looked at it now and thought bread. I'm not even kidding.
Bread.
That
Purple
was
bread.
never in the
Are
beginning.
you hungry?
Purple bread.
I don't know.
Wasn't that a thing in the 90s where you could cut like color colors the popcorn? You can get color dye for your popcorn.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yes. Okay, so
Tangent.
and then this piece, just like that top purple, I only want certain parts moving, so I'm just going to mask this off. So you're gonna think about it. I'm using, let's say I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subtools right now, right? And those 6 subtools all have different types of masking on them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click again that little option all the way to the right on the gizmo, which is our transpose select all subtools. So just like Joseph explained, I'm going to hold down Control Shift, which is the same way we make selections. I'm just going to click and drag over. And that selection, seeing whatever subtools sit in that selection, automatically are selected. So if you rotate around, you can see the back plug parts, and you can see little screw heads right there. They kind of had that, what do you call that, I guess?
Hatch lines?
Hatch lining, yeah,
Yeah,
there you go,
yeah.
thank you. I was thinking like blinds for some reason, blind thing.
They're kind of like
That
blinds.
works too.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you, Paul. You can label it. It's your world.
It's your world,
as you
Paul.
say.
It's your world.
I'll do me, you do you.
Yeah, you do you, Paul. You do
All
you.
right, so continue on. I want to now adjust the height of this. So all I have to do now is I'm in the gizmo mode, and I grab this, and I say, hey, I want to adjust my height of this model. And then it's going to go ahead and adjust the height, and all the live booleans are still updating and
Awesome.
staying with it. So now I can make a really high one, tall one, and then Lockheed Martin's probably, if they're watching, going,
Like, oh, it's not functional. If you take it that
You're not
out.
supposed to make it that
It breaks
tall.
all the inner mechanics.
too expensive. So that I just wanted to highlight that because that was something that was very handy for me because it saved me having that new option. So I'm holding down Control Shift, click and dragging to highlight. And again, this middle cutout piece, I want to highlight this again. I'm going to grab that piece, okay? And I'm going to say, let's go and switch to the deformer, which you guys are used to this. I'm not going to spend too much time with this because my man Solomon is going to be doing more with this. So I can change my spans how I want. Because what I really like about this is I could be now symmetrical, not based upon necessarily the mesh, but the actual deformer is symmetrical. And then you know that little Control-Alt thing I told you about that was like, whoop-de-doo, right? Here's where it comes into play. So you see all these little white dots? Those are active points, okay, to this deformer. So now I'm going to hold down that Control and Alt. I'm going to say I only want those points. And now you can see every other point is gone because now they're in essence masked. And I can now start adjusting this, and you can see I can have some fun. And again, the benefit of a non-destructive system, I can see where I'm going and what I'm doing with this. So I just wanted to highlight some things that were really beneficial for me. Okay, so I want to move on to something that, again, a project I'm like, oh man, I've always wanted to do my own of this character because I'm a massive fan and I loved the comic book. I actually enjoyed the movie, which came out like 1990.
It's been a while.
I want to say.
Is it 90?
I think it's 90, maybe 91. So for those that don't know what this is, log out.
You're done.
Kidding, don't
You're
log
done.
out. So this is the Rocketeer. I'm a huge fan of it. So I'm building my own Rocketeer collectible.
This seems to be your Halloween costume. You know that.
Yes, it
yeah,
does.
Dress is making this a mandatory Halloween
Yeah,
costume.
yeah.
So I've already prepped my wife and said I'm being the Rocketeer. Okay, so it's my wife's favorite holiday, by the way, Halloween. So she really enjoys it. So I wanted to create more elements in this, and this is some other stuff that I wanted to do, right? So you can see in here there's a lot of other details and things like that, like having cut lines, right, where I'm clearly using a Boolean. So let's think of this in a different way, though. Let's go back to this item, okay, and think about I want to now add some cut lines not based upon Boolean. So this is my resulted mesh now from my Boolean. So you can see it's 8.7 million ballpark, okay? And it's 9 subtools because I had 9 groups, okay? So I'm going to go to the top here. I'm going to switch to a new brush that also comes in, which is, we've got some new chisel brushes, okay? So I'm going to grab that chisel, and then you're going to see this open up along the top, which is that new IMM selector viewer. But the difference here is this is not insert mesh brushes. This is, in essence, multiple alphas on one brush, okay? So I'm going to click on this brush tip number 7, and our man, Ask ZBrush Master, Mr. Joseph, made all these. So if you don't like any of them, please email Joseph. So I want to now say, you know what, I'm going to go with a little bit smaller brush size, right? And let's just see maybe on this front plate what it does. So, right, so I can start drawing it out. I get a really nice clean result, very nice line. So something that we've added here is to the lazy mouse, we've added this lazy snap feature. So what this is going to allow us to do is actually have a continuous stroke, okay? So I'm going to be able to draw out, ZBrush is going to remember where it left off on the previous stroke, and then when I go close to that previous stroke, it's going to snap. So let me show you this a little bit in action, but I'm also going to add one other element to this that is going to be key, and you're going to see why. I'm going to hit the store the morph target, okay? I'm going to look straight from the top, because this is kind of where I want to put this. And of course, I have symmetry mode on, okay? So instead of me just click and drag on the surface, I'm going to click, and I'm going to hold the shift key. And we've got now this line popping up, okay? And you can see there are numbers. This is, in essence, degrees. So there's 45 degrees, here's 0 degrees, right? So if I let go of the shift key, right, you can see the stroke automatically gets applied along that line. So some of you might be saying really fast, well, Paul, it didn't go all the way to the end of the line.
That's what I was thinking in my head.
Didn't
in that
go.
voice.
Boys, there's a reason for this.
Oh, please tell us.
There's always a reason my madness, okay? So in the stroke, the lazy radius for this brush is like cranked up. This is Joseph Drush crank up, probably.
So lazy.
That felt
So
personal.
lazy.
That felt very personal.
Because I think every brush he owns has lazy radius cranked up.
It's true. And I
Yeah,
also like
see?
my smooth
okay.
stronger
I
to
like
be the
really-
strongest
Oh,
possible.
God, smooth
I enjoy
stronger.
a long lazy
Smooth
radius as
stronger,
well.
stronger, stronger.
All right, let's move on. So I'm going to drop this to 8, okay? And so it's a smaller radius, and let's redo that. So again, I'm clicking on the surface, holding the shift key, saying that's where I want it. I'm not taking my pen off the Cintiq and letting go, and now you can see I get to the end. And then now I want to continue the stroke, so I go, okay, click, hold the shift key, and I say I want it maybe on an angle like that. And you can see that continued exactly where I left off. And I can continue doing this process. This is Joseph's favorite thing, because his mind can't calculate the click here, shift key. Like, I get it. I get it, Joseph. I get it. Okay, but what's awesome and why I stored a morph target, storing the morph target not only allows me to continue my stroke, but I can freely continue to sculpt and actually sculpt over itself as many times as I want, and that depth is being maintained.
This still hasn't set in for me. This is such a great addition.
So you want me to rewind and
I
do
think
it?
you should do it one more time.
That doesn't make sense to most people. So again, I've stored a morph target. That's going to allow me to have this continue stroke capability, okay? And it's going to allow me to actually draw over. And again, there's questions probably out, do I have to hold the shift key? You don't have to hold the shift key. See, you can see I can go anywhere, and it's going to continue. So if I just start, here, let's go somewhere a little more fresh, and I start doing this, and now if I want to rotate along, okay? Now, if you're using a pen, one thing I would do is my brush by default probably has some pressure sensitivity to it, okay? So you can see in this tablet pressure the size. So you can see at the end of my stroke the size is changed a little bit. So if I'm going to use a pen, you're going to want to make sure to turn that all the way up. Okay, so if you're going to start making your own brushes, I'm going to show you how you can make your own brushes, okay? And then that's going to allow me to just continue drawing from that point and so forth and so on, okay? So let's go back to now the Rocketeer, continuing, that looks beautiful, making this. I wanted to make, of course, the gun, which is actually a Mauser. It's not a Luger. It's not a Luger. Okay, so again, I'll turn off the live boolean so you guys can see, and this is reiterating how simple shapes I'm using to just create the cuts. I'm not getting anything too complex. It's all the shapes coming together. It's making that complexity, all right? So I'm going to say, all right, I want to start doing things like adding a logo or putting some text in here. So what we've added to 4R8, I'm going to shimmy that over here, and we've added now a text 3D with vector shapes. Okay, so you're going to be able to now make your own text and use SVG files, make your own logos, do whatever you want. So let's just first look at a text. I'm going to say new text. I'm going to say, let's say 4R8. Beautiful. Okay, and what this is going to do is automatically make a new subtool to this row on my gun and put it where I want it. There. Perfect.
Classic.
Classic.
What a
So
setup.
again, I'm going to go here to my subtools so you guys can see this. You can see it's at the bottom through my list here, right? So this is another live item. So it's real time. So if I want to start editing this a little bit, okay, I can change my extrusion and see it actually update right there on the fly. I can actually add maybe a little bit of beveling to this, and then now I'm putting a bevel on that. You can see in the 8 and the R, it's a little faceted, okay? So we have a resolution capability, so I can up that resolution, and then it's all updating for me and doing this on the fly, okay? So obviously, some of us will have various different fonts on our computers. So let's just take a look at some fonts. Let's just put it down a little bit more to the defaults and say, all right, I want to look at all the fonts on my system. So you're going to have capability right here to grab any one of the fonts you want. And when you click it, you can see it updates. And make sure when you do it, you snap your fingers, right? So whatever you do, you know, again,
Every time.
Let's
Every
do it together.
time.
There you go.
Hey.
All right. Yay. I really want to get sound effects in ZBrush. I think it would be pretty
I would
awesome.
get annoyed so quickly.
Pixologic, can you please put sound effects in ZBrush? Thank you. Yeah.
Somebody just said yes.
Most people won't want sound effects. Okay. So not only that, we're looking at what's on your system. Okay. You are probably might now that you have this start wanting to go download some things. So you can actually load texts from files here. So I have a text here. Okay. So maybe I want to use this one instead. Ooh, it's very pretty. So very elegant. Very nice.
Very elegant.
Very. But it can even do something as complex as this brush, okay, font, right? And this is going to look like literally brush strokes, right? This is pretty crazy how well robust we've made this. And then, of course, we throw our gizmo on, right? We size this down a little bit and say, all right, let's position this and let's see what we get as a Boolean result. Again, this one is just going to be world space. I mean, as far as camera space, so I can rotate this however I want, right? Put this where I want it to go. Beautiful. Perfect.
Beautiful.
That's exactly where I want it. Okay? And then continue to manipulate, change the size that I want, move it in a different position. Okay? And then now maybe I want to start using this. Let's put it on this side so it actually reads correct. Right? So what I'm going to do is in my subtools, I'm going to move this from the bottom, and I'll move it all the way to the top. So I'm going to hold the Shift key and tap on the little arrow, and that puts it all the way to the top subtool. Okay, and I want it to affect this one piece and be part of that new start group. So now I just drop it down in there, right? And now you can see it's being affected by the Booleans, and I can make this a subtract. And then now we're talking. Now we're using this font, and I can put this wherever I want. Yes. There.
Yeah.
There. And again, note that the material for 4R8, right, that text is a different material than what I've assigned to this gun. Okay, so continuing this idea, besides text, we want to be able to create logos as well. So this is where the new SVG comes into play. So I'm going to say new SVG. I'm going to say, great, let's get some SVGs. All of us have always wanted the Pixologic makers of ZBrush. I load that SVG, it's done, there it is. We've got our logo, right? And you can see, again, the resolution's kind of low, so I can up that resolution a little bit. I can change my extrusions. I can add a bevel to it, right? I can say that's a little too much, just a little too much, okay? But now I'm like, I don't want this logo. I want the Z-Man, right? So instead of new,
You want the Z-Man.
I want the Z-Man. I'm going to edit SVG, click on that, and now I'm just going to grab that guy and click this, and we're actually going to swap out, and it's
Z-Man.
the same subtool. That's key. So anytime you guys hit new SVG or new text, you're making a new subtool that gets appended. Whenever you do edit SVG, that selected SVG gets replaced, and then that edit text gets replaced. And then you can see that the transformations is kept. So also with the bevel, I want to put maybe a little bit more. This might be a little extreme, maybe not that much. Let's go maybe 15. Again, real-time updating for myself. I'm going to put some bevel resolution on this puppy here. And what that's doing is adding resolutions here. So I know people are probably asking, let me see the geometry. If not, I'll show it. Okay, so there's my geometry. I'm going to turn off live booleans for now so you guys can see this. So you can see this really, it's about really creating clean geometry. In fact, this little adaptive button will give you 2 different types of geometry. But what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to play with this curvature slider, and I'm going to go negative, and look what happens to my bevel there. It completely changes. So we're now going inward. I love that I'm looking at the TV over here like you guys are there.
You're there. Yep.
We're doing this now, people. I'm so used to talking to people this way, not this way. So we're having now a nice bevel that way. Or if I want to go positive, okay, we're now going to turn it into a nice rounded chamfer. Okay? So that's another new plugin that we're adding to 4R8. Now we have text and logo craziness. Do whatever we want with that. So I want to move on to somebody's beta model, which this is Marcin Clicky, and he made this dragon during beta. So I really want to talk about the new feature, which is VDM, which stands for Vector Displacement Mesh. Okay? So I kind of want to touch base on how he was able to do items like this. Okay? So typically, if we were going to do this in, say, ZBrush 4R8, I would have a brush. So I'm going to go to the brush palette and say, all right, there's my paw brush and my toothbrush. Okay? And I'm going to say, I want to start putting now more teeth on him. So obviously, as I draw this out, we have limitations, right? It's really only pushing in one direction, right? So we can do positive and negative. Yay, good times, right?
Yeah.
Super fun. So
Nice goals.
what we're now going to have the capability is, forget using a 2D alpha. I'm going to use an actual physical mesh as the alpha, and I can also create a vector mesh, which is going to allow for undercutting. So for some of those that don't know, here, I'll draw this out again. You can see that, for example, this tooth, there's a gap between there, so that's an undercut that's happening. And I'm going to continue talking about this. So I'm going to load now a brush that Marcin also made, which this is the brush that he made to actually make this dragon. So you can see along the top again, this is not insert mesh brushes. These are actually what we call a VDM, which again, Vector Displacement Mesh. So this is going to allow Marcin to say, oh, where do I want this? And all it's doing is pushing the surface, right? And I'm not worried about the underlining because I can put this wherever I want, okay? And so this is kind of what he started to do, is make different types of variations of these scales, right? And be working on this. And this is on a 5.6 million, almost 6 million polygon mesh. You can see how smooth that is. So of course, as an artist, I don't want to sit here and do this.
You may want to do that.
I think that's kind of nice.
You may. By the way, there's no audio because I'm bored. So I want to be a little bit faster with this. So I'm going to go into my stroke, right? I'm going to throw on my lazy mouse. The default looks pretty good to me. I'm going to say, instead of this, what he used was the drag dot. I'm going to switch to Mr. Dots, okay? I don't know why I said dots like that, but dots, okay? And then now I want to say, maybe I want those, instead of doing that, I want them to come across the top.
Okay.
And then now you're getting a lot of the undercutting happening through there on a stroke, and then maybe I want some smaller ones coming through. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Marcin, if you're
That's the sound
watching,
effect, yes.
I'm very sorry about what I'm doing to your model. Okay, so I just want to touch briefly on how do you create these undercutting vector displacement mesh pieces. So me personally, I like to start with this plain 3D, okay? Then of course, if you guys have been following along with me,
I got to be different, right?
okay, you got it here, but Drust is different. So in the projects now, there is more stuff we're shipping and giving you in 4R8. So there is some, in the miscellaneous, there are some starting templates here. So what's very important when you guys are going to create any kind of VDM, you want to have a perfect plane like this, equally distributed quads, okay? You can't use a Dynamesh. You can't use a remesh. It's got to be nice, equally distributed, because there's something special happening here, okay? So I'm going to just throw on, let's go ahead and start going, all right, let's make something here. All right, so I'm going to say brush. Let's go ahead and go to my move. And I'll just start let's make my own little horn. Maybe I'll just start pulling out surface. There. So you can see we're really pushing this geometry quite a bit, right? So I can divide up, of course, and start getting a little bit more result. Maybe and say, yes, this is the horn I'm looking for. Let's switch to the clay, start adding my surface. So we can continue this process, right, and build something that has a lot of details. And I'm going to start pulling up some stuff for you that has a little bit more detailing to it. You can see kind of where I'm going. Nowhere near as good as Marcine's stuff or some other beta tester stuff that's been done. So this, in essence, has got an undercut. So this is an undercut, right? Because if we look at this surface, this is sticking out going past the surface. So how do I convert this? And in fact, let's one-up this. Let's go back to Marcine's brush, and let's add it to his brush. Because he's going to be thrilled to have this piece, for sure, on his brush. So in the brush palette, in the Create options, we now have a whole new Create menu. So this all works with this new system of having a multiple vector displacement meshes across the top, your insert mesh brushes. So this has been asked for a lot of people. I want to be able to delete certain insert mesh brushes, copy them, paste them. There you go. Now you're able to do it, right? So besides this menu, we now have a from mesh and to mesh. So I can actually say from mesh here, and what that's doing is captured this mesh and it's putting it at the end of the line, and there's my beautiful horn that's there. And then, of course, if I click and drag it, I'm going to get, oh, what I just did, right? So I'm able to even add to brushes. I'm going to say, that's not very good. Let's go to brush, and I'm going to say delete the mesh, and then you can see it is now gone. So you can add it to the end, right? Or I can even say copy meshes of this whole brush and place it somewhere else. So, of course, what I started to do, right, is look at, maybe I want to start doing things like this and make a tool that's got a bunch of different variations of having a flat plane and having just different items. Noses. Well, you never know what kind of nose you're going to need. Okay, so mouths, so forth, and so on. So there's a lot of things I can do here.
Steve Buscemi
So
eye.
I'm showing a one way to create your pieces. I can even do something else. So you see this nose? I can actually import that as actually a vector displacement mesh. So I'm going to say import, okay? And now what you guys are going to have the capability to do is import a 32-bit EXR file. So now I have this dog nose here, which is actually a vector displacement mesh of my sculpt, okay? And then I'm saying make this into a VDM mesh. So I can say to mesh, right? Boom, there's my dog nose. So you can either use a vector displacement, bring it in, or you can start from the plane wherever you want. So the reason why I did this, because something that's also new to 4.8 that I actually really liked, is I just started making a tool here, right? So they're all various ones. Again, I can hold the shift key now to turn them all on. There. Modern art.
Perfect.
That's my mantra. Perfect. Okay? So I'm going to say, let's grab a different new one, the chisel creature. And I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to wipe these out, and I actually want to use the subtools and make them into a brush with this vector displacement mesh capability. So in the brush palette, in the Create, we now have a new button called Create Multiple Alpha Brush. So all I got to do now is click on this. ZBrush is looking at the tool now. It's seeing I have 27 of them, all right? And then it's taking all those, and it's going to put them on the top for me and replace what I already had in this brush. So you can see now they're all updated to my brush. So now I, in essence, have built my own brush here. So if we go back to our handy-dandy polysphere, of course,
Handy-dandy.
it's always handy. You know, it's a Dynamesh, so we'll keep it a Dynamesh, but let's divide it up. Let's give it some love. Give it some love. And then now I can just grab whatever I want, right? And I can say, all right, I want that to be a -100, and then start drawing these out, and we can put whatever we want on this.
Little mad balls you got going on there.
Yeah, for those that don't know, this is where Justin and I were like, mad balls. So it's an 80s thing. So we do have some young viewers.
Oh, 80s reference?
Yeah.
Not you guys.
That's my thing, 80s, right? And so now I can just start going crazy here. New emoticons.
Oh, this is
Oh,
looking
there you
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
There.
yeah. Put him in the movie. That's approved. Send it
Print.
on through.
Print.
Send it to animation.
Print. So you can see the flexibility you have here. Like, look, this is like an elf ear, right? That has all that undercutting, all that
Love it.
nose, right? So even if we look inside of this nose, right, we got all that interlining geometry. So here, I'll go to my display properties and then double so you guys can see all that undercutting is being supported in the brush. So really powerful. And a lot of beta testers, which you're gonna see some images here later on in the broadcast, what they've done with this. So that's it from me. I'm going to swing it back to the boys on the couch. We got to give that winner
We do.
that prize
Yep.
of the swagness.
Yeah, our question number 2.
Question number 2.
So who do we got dressed as our winner?
All right, so for the question, the answer was live Boolean. And then our winner, now I apologize, I'm going to massacre this name.
I'm glad it's finally not me.
Alfio B. Persuti Jr., all the way from Brazil. So,
From
Thanks.
Brazil.
someone
All
in
right.
Brazil. So congratulations.
Yeah,
Thanks for
congratulations.
joining.
We got all the,
Swag here.
and this guy. Yeah, the whoop, whoop.
The whoop whoop. That's
Whoop,
right.
whoop.
All right, so now we've got our final question. What does our final question involve? What's the prize for this one?
The prize for this one, Joseph, let me answer that for you, is not the one
This is
and
our
only.
power pack. Yes.
This is our power pack. And let me just fire this baby up.
This is the Mobile Studio Pro.
Mobile Studio Pro.
This
we
is
got-
Solomon's right here, right now. Solomon's
Yeah,
been
it's a little
sleeping on
greasy.
this. He's been
You
sleeping
can
on
probably
it.
see your earmark on the screen somewhere.
Oh, yeah. No, this is the imprint of an ear. I may or may not have slept on this couch last night. Yeah, so this is going to be your prize. We'll keep it unlogged in
Yes.
for now. But
And what else are they getting?
Yeah, they're getting also, again, you guys are getting with that, you're getting Keyshot Pro for ZBrush, version 6. You're getting the ZBrush to Keyshot Bridge. You're also going to get ZBrush on there. And
there we go.
There you go.
Whoa.
Yes.
you're going to get the
Yes.
Flip Steady, which is a pretty awesome stand that's made actually specifically for the mobile studio.
I've been using this a lot, but the Flip Steady gives you all kinds of angles and
It's
different
like an
ways
arm,
to hold
what
it.
is that?
Articulated arm. I don't know.
No, origami. Origami.
Yep,
Cat
you got
thing.
it.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. Just looks at me like that makes no sense.
That makes no sense.
I get it. Sometimes I flutter my own self.
All right. So the question
Yes.
for number 3
That's for this.
for the Mobile Studio Pro,
Okay.
the grand prize. Can we say grand prize?
The Grand ZBrush mobile pack.
The question is, now once again, you want to answer this with hashtag ZBrush 4R8 on Twitter. So make sure you're on there. And the question is,
Wait, before you go, I want to highlight your answer has to be very specific for this.
we're going for specific on this
Very
one?
specific. And I'm going to tell you right now the answer is not one word or 2 words.
So how many words is it?
I'm not telling how many words, but I'm just telling you right now. It's not 1 word. It's not 2 words.
Does it contain words?
It contains words.
Okay.
and
Okay,
characters.
well, let me get to the question.
All right,
Come
go.
on.
Well, I had to let them know before you ask it so they know what to write, Truss.
All right, so the question is,
Get back in your backyard.
Pixologic's ZBrush was awarded what prestigious award? So the question again, for all you viewers out there, is Pixologic's ZBrush was awarded what prestigious award?
I'm going to throw in a 30-second
major
go-to meeting with
award.
Joseph Just, if you can say the year.
Wow.
30 seconds is all you get?
That's it. No more than 30 seconds. All right, so go ahead and again, remember on Twitter, and then you're going to put that answer, hashtag ZBrush4R8. So we are now going to transition
To
into
Solomon.
our man Solomon. So here we go. Solomon, you're up.
Oh, water.
All right. I'm walking over to the couch.
You're on the couch.
Yeah, so we're going to give Solomon just a couple seconds here. I almost literally put my arm right on the
Yeah, don't be doing
Studio
that.
Pro. Let's put it back here so I don't actually...
So the slideshow you guys are seeing are some of the fabulous artists we had contribute
Yeah, these are all...
work in the betas. These are all beta artwork here. So really, really awesome images you guys are seeing here right now. So very talented group of artists.
Yeah, it was fun working with them and seeing what they did and getting their feedback on where everything goes. So it's been a really fun time putting this version together, and we're looking forward. Again, we'll be announcing at the end of this broadcast when 4R8 is going to be getting released. We'll be also announcing for those ZBrush Core users a path to success, and we'll be also letting the 4.7 user base know how you're going to get 4R8. Okay, so make sure, don't go anywhere.
Stay
right?
tuned.
Stay
Grab
tuned.
the
A,
popcorn.
you want to get into this Wacom Studio
yeah.
Pro prize,
Yeah.
of course, and you're going to want to stay. I'm just saying, you're going to want to stick around. Okay, so my man Solomon, I think you're ready now, yeah?
I am ready, sir.
All right,
All
you
right.
take it away.
All right, so I'm going to be bringing it home with this last presentation, and Paul and Joseph have kind of touched on. They gave you a little teaser of the deformers, and I'm going to add a little extra sizzle. I'm going to try to, and I want to, maybe give you guys a full preview of how to actually use these things. So in this example, you guys have seen the lattice deformer, which I feel like is maybe the most commonly used one, or one that you guys may have used previously. And we have all kinds of deformers. If I open up the gizmo, click open the gear icon, and you see we have our 8 deformers. So the first one is just the standard deformer, which is just a basic lattice deformer. And just to kind of go into the basic functionality of how these things work, each deformer is going to have these cone controllers attached to the deformer. And each one has different cones in different ways, but one of the main reasons why we have this attached to the gizmo itself is because all of these deformer tools are inherently localized to the gizmo itself. So if you've been using ZBrush for a long time, you've probably learned how to make use of the deformation sub-palette that has all these sliders. But in the past, using this method, to make the best use of those features, you had to keep the mesh at the center. So one of the great things about the gizmo is, let's say, for example, I think this question was asked on Twitter, I think it's somewhere on Twitch, using the gizmo and having the ability to snap to vertex points. So we actually can hold the Alt key and we can click on any part of the mesh and reorient the gizmo itself. So for example, if I were to orient to the character's arm and go in here and turn on the deformer, you can see that it's going to be oriented to the gizmo itself, which is going to give us all kinds of options to use these, and I'll kind of try and go in and give you some examples. But for this one, I'm just going to go in here and click the reset here. Actually, I'm going to delete this, and let's start from scratch.
Solomon, we already have a question about your hat.
I knew it. I knew. Okay, so unfortunately, this is custom made. My coworker Ernest and I, we got this made somewhere here in LA. But
Yes.
hey, if there's a high enough demand for it, put it out there, and we'll see what we can do. But we do have the wonderful ZBrush hats, which is also up for a giveaway. So anyway, so let's go into this. So I've got the deformer localized. All I did was alt-click on the locator icon and refresh to reorient this to 90 degrees. Now I'm going to go in here, let's close that deformation subpalette, and I'm going to click the gear icon and apply the deformer. So the basics of this, clearing points, simply holding control, we can click to drag to remove any points. We can hold control and alt to select large points. Control click to inverse. Very similar functionality to masking, inversing, selecting. But what's really great about this is we can actually go in and click on a single point, hold the shift key, and we can select individual points like so. All right, so all the essential functionality for selecting the points in the way that you'd like. Now let's get into the cones here. So we have the orange cones right here at the top, and these are going to control the divisions of the deformer itself. You see by clicking and dragging, we can actually control how many divisions, which is going to give us more points to manipulate the mesh. So in this case, I'll reduce it just to keep it pretty simple at this point. And then attached to each orange cone, we have a white smoothness cone, and then we also have the symmetry options, which are at the very end. So you'll see when I hover over all of these cones with the deformers, they're going to give a little text pop up below that'll show you what it does. So I'm going to leave the smoothness set to 1. Setting symmetry to number 1 is going to work in parallel. So this is going to essentially allow us to continuously apply the adjustments across the x-axis. If I want to undo, just press Control-Z. And if we set this to number 2, this is going to work symmetrically. So now I could go in here, and one of the other awesome things about this is I can essentially just click on an individual point. Let's solo this guy out so you can see it a little better. We can click on points and just start to drag. So we don't even have to really go in and select a ton of points, but you can see how it's affecting the character. So let's say, for example, I have this bust here that I'm working on, and I just want to make some slight silhouette adjustments. And a lot of times when I get towards the end of the sculpting, I'm having a hard time getting those perfect angles, and I want to have these fine-tuned controls. This is one of the great uses of this deformer. So I'm going to go ahead in here, and let's talk about the accept and reset. So we can click accept, which will apply any deformations. Clicking reset is going to remove any and reset the deformer back to its previous settings. So what we can do is, let's say, for example, I want to go in and I want to start to adjust maybe the character's abs. I want to bring these up a little bit. but you'll notice that the character's hands, based on the close proximity of the points, are actually being moved just a little bit. So one of the awesome things about this, if we just go ahead and delete this very quickly, I'm going to turn on my symmetry and grab the lasso. So I can go in here and I can apply a mask. So I'll just blur this out just a little bit, inverse and blur in both directions. So now I'm protecting the arm, and I can go back, apply my deformer, right? And now I can go in and just click to affect this mesh, and it won't affect the character's arms, which is really amazing and gives you all kinds of possibilities when using this tool. Right? So I could go in, and if I wanted to protect parts of the character's face or go work on a particular part of the character, let's say, for example, I want to maybe just fix the silhouette of the character's back. I could Control-Alt to select a few points. And what's really cool is anytime you have multiple selections, right, we can use the gizmo. You can either use the X, Y, and Z controllers, or based on the camera view, we can use these little corner controls, right? So if you're offset in a 3/4, if you want to slightly adjust it this way, these corner controls give you pretty much any direction you want to move, you can move, right? So I can go in and just grab these guys and readjust this, right? And then maybe let's go in here and let's accept this. I'm going to do one more. And this time, I'm going to apply one more division across this way. All right, so I'm going to make some adjustments to the character's head. So just grabbing these points, maybe bring these guys up. All right, so one thing I do want to talk about are these smoothness cones. All right, so you see we have, let me make a little drastic adjustment.
Cone head.
The cone head, there you go. Yeah. See, that's the idea I was looking for. I needed an inspiration.
There you go.
That's where I'm going with this one. So the smoothness cones by default are set to 1, which is a maximum setting for this feature. So if I were to go and click and reduce the amount of smoothness for each axis, you'll see that it's going to transition to a hard edge.
Now
we're working on the cone head, right? All right, so I think this is done. I can move on from this.
Perfect.
All right, so using the smoothness, if you're working with a mesh that has a rigid surface and you don't want it to be as smooth, you can reduce the smoothness. And what's really great about this is you can apply it and you can variably go in and change this. If I want to set these back, I can simply just click and drag to apply that smoothness back. So just making sure I do it in all axes, and you'll see that it's going to work. All right, so let's go ahead and accept this, and I'll do one more demonstration. I'm going to solo this off. All right, so for the character shoulder pads, for example, using the deformer tool, ooh, that looks really bad. I'm going to undo that.
No way, man, keep it.
Okay, he's missing his hair, but that's fine.
No, that's fine.
All right, so let's say you want to take just a basic piece and use the deformer to wrap it around a surface. All right, so let's load the top piece here. And I'm just going to shift-click to turn off all these guys. So we just have the character. Oh, I have the arrow on. Silly me. All right, so we got the character and just this little shoulder pad piece. So what's really great is, if you have a piece that's off-centered or doesn't have to be at the perfect center, we can go in here and apply deformer. And we can actually go in, if we want to, we can match the edge loops to the mesh in all axes. All right, so I'm just clicking and dragging X, Y, and Z cones to set these. That's right there. And then let's do Z. All right, that looks good. Now, at the beginning stages, we have to choose whether or not we want to work in symmetry or not. So in the Z cone, I'm going to have this set to 0. All right, so I'm going to go through and just start to fit this to the character's body. Oops, where did I lose that one? Okay, so clear the selection. So I'm just going to Control, Alt, and select the front faces here. So what's really awesome is I can go and use the rotate. I can bring this down, right? If I want to go and just maybe clear my points, grab these guys, I can rotate these like so, start to bring these down, all right? And then you'll notice that the mesh right now, the points aren't exactly perfectly matched. So this is where that smoothness comes in if you have a rigid surface. So I could go in and just click and drag to reduce my smoothness down to 0, and now it's perfectly matched to that mesh. So a lot of options, really. You can choose. If you forget, no big deal. You can go in and just adjust it. All right, so I can continue to sort of bring these down. And then let's grab the next faces, just rotating a little bit. All right, and I can switch to my gizmo back and forth by just tabbing. So I'm pressing the hotkeys for move, scale, or rotate. In this case, I'm just clicking W. So you might have seen Paul and Joseph go into the menu, selecting back and forth between these. We can just toggle back and forth and make adjendants. Right?
You're saying we were doing it wrong.
Yeah, well, essentially, I was trying to be nice about it.
Essentially, you guys have no idea what you're doing.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Okay. All right, so anyways, they're joking, of course. I'm a nice guy, right? All right, so
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we're selecting. So let's say I want to inverse. I made the wrong selection. Control, click to inverse that selection, and I can do a larger chunk here. All right, so I can continue to use these to wrap this, right, and put this into place. All right, so I found all kinds of uses for this tool. Again, kind of using it as a way to do just some slight tweaks and adjustments, or using it as a modeling tool to take a piece and wrap it, or there's all kinds of possibilities. So I'll just click accept, right, and I could go into rotate, and I now have the base mesh that I can continue to work. All right, so that's the deformer tool. Hopefully you guys will, once you guys get a hold of it, you'll find all kinds of uses for it. I've had a blast using these deformers, honestly. The deformers have kind of become my project.
Your go-to.
My go-to.
You love it. I especially like to click on a single point often. You're a big fan of that.
You know, I like to have fine-tuned controls.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
I'm not embarrassed of that. You
Okay.
know?
All right.
I like options.
You do
guys. I
you.
like options.
You do you.
You
This
do
is
you.
not in Joseph's backyard.
No.
Yeah, well,
But you probably have a backpack like that.
I'm sure you do.
I do.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
he does.
yeah.
Captain Military over here.
Joseph Dress, you're my inspiration for this piece.
What, the one before or the backpack?
The orc.
No. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is let's open up I'm going to localize this to just the mesh here for now. And let's click up on the wheel. And now the next one I want to talk about is the bend curve. So the bend curve, kind of thinking about the insert mesh. If you guys have been using ZBrush for a long time, you probably use insert mesh along a curve to make straps and buckles and all kinds of things, which is a really amazing feature. But one of the things that it requires you to do is draw it on top of another surface. So in this case, this has a lot of similarities, but you'll see here when I apply this deformer that I have these points here applied to the mesh. So these points can actually be manipulated and used to stretch and pull the mesh, right? And these exist along a curve or a spline. So I can go in here and I can change my resolution. At the top we have the orange cone, so I can add more points along this curve. All right, so we can choose all different axes. I can click the red cone, which by default this is in the X axis. So I can change this to Y or Z. All right, so you can apply it in all axes. And again, one thing to highlight before I move on to the demonstration here is let's accept this, is all of these deformers we can reorient based on the gizmo. So let's say, for example, I turn it at an angle. So I'm holding Alt and I can just click and drag on the rotation wheel, and now I can apply the bend curve along this axis, right? And I can go through and set X, Y, and Z. So the benefit is you don't have to model your mesh perfectly at the center. If it's sitting at a different angle, you can still apply it to all kinds of meshes at different angles. So you've got a lot of flexibility with that. So for this example, I have just a basic strap here, and I want to use the bend curve to apply to create the straps and sort of get the wrapping around and get some of the twisting effects. So I'll turn off the example here, and I've got the gizmo oriented to the mesh. So if at any time for some reason your gizmo gets lost out in space, you can always Alt-click on the mesh, and it'll lock to those surface normals. And also, we can Alt-click and hold, and we can actually snap it in those different directions. Right? So you can really, if I zoom in there, you can see I can snap it to the edge loops. You see how it actually will snap to those lines? So this is something that comes in handy for me if I want to orient something to, say, I don't know, say this piece, right, or a certain part of the mesh. I could just Alt-tap, and I can orient to this. Right, and so on. So there's all kinds of options. The gizmo has been amazing, but I still have love for the transpose tool. I'm just going to say it. I love transpose. It's one of my favorite tools, but gizmo has been amazing, especially for these booleans. So orient this. I'm going to just Alt-click to the center, and we can also refresh. So I'll apply the bend curve. Now I'm going to reduce the point here to, say, maybe 5, and let's change the axis and Z. All right, so now that we have this applied, I can simply go in and start clicking to move these points. So I can click, and you'll see that the mesh, as long as we keep even spacing between it, we can keep this nice and clean. I can start to adjust this, maybe taper this down just a little bit. Right? And one of the awesome features with this deformer is the smoothing feature. So we have this blue cone here at the top. Now let's say I've got like this piece is way out here. I want to smooth out this transition. I can click and drag the blue cone to smooth, and I can continue to apply it. So this will help you to clean up any messiness and allow you to just start working without having to be focused on keeping everything too clean. All right, so once I get these into place, let's talk about these cones. So you'll see we have 3 cones attached to each point. And you'll notice that when I hover over this, if I hover over the cone here itself, oh, it's popping up over here. All right, so you see twist, scale, and squeeze. All right, so scale, obviously we'll scale it. Squeeze is going to squeeze it or shrink that mesh like so. All right, and twist, which is one of my favorites, you can actually click to now twist these pieces. So I didn't want to have this be perfectly, straight across. Like say, for example, you want to match this. I have the character that the backpack is going to be applied to, it loaded in. If I wanted to just kind of like maybe go through and readjust the leveling of all this, right? So I could use the twisting. And also, what's really great about this is we don't have to stick with the resolution. So I can actually add more points. So I can add another resolution division, give me another point here to apply to this curve. All right, so all kinds of possibilities with this. In a practical sense, you can use it in this way to apply to straps or meshes, right? I could use it to apply to a part of the backpack and maybe scale a part or squeeze a part. So there's all kinds of effects that we have. One more example with this, so once I'm done, just simply clicking open the wheel, clicking accept, all right, and that's good to go. All right, so another example that I have is, one thing that I was doing is, I think at the time, a lot of my stuff ends up being fan art, but at the time Doctor Strange was out, and I was watching a lot of Doctor Strange, very Inception-driven, bending buildings, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to use it to apply to more rigid surfaces to create interesting effects in this way. So this is an example of a cityscape, and let me just take a drink.
Your theme is movie-based for sure.
Yeah, that's my movie.
Movie-based.
My movie, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm not ashamed of it.
There's no need to be ashamed.
All right, so this is just a very quick example. I've got just some basic, buildings that I modeled, and I've got these skyscraper towers. So we could say take this piece. I've got the deformer already applied, so I'm just toggling this, and I have 3 points. So I could maybe click to drag the top of the tower, click the center point to start to get a bending effect. Right, bringing this into a scene, and I wanted to eventually do a scene from the street view, like somewhere down here. So I wanted the building to be wrapping towards you. So I could actually bring it over here, and I can use the twist to start twisting it, like so. Right, and if I need to smooth it out, I can smooth that transition out more. Right, or I could go in, add another point, and you'll notice that as we add more points, it's going to localize more to the mesh. So if you wanted to get like some really warping and distortion, you could go in and apply those, maybe smooth them out. All right, so I could switch back to the other one, right, and apply it as if the skyscraper was
Bowing
or splitting in half. I think that was the goal. Is that
It reminds me of the assignment I think every animation person had, right, where you had to take a non-real object and make it bring to life. I did a drink box with a straw.
There's usually like flowers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, back in my day.
Did you give it eyes?
No, the straw was trying to get away from the drink box. It didn't want to go in.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah.
I think I did a plastic jar of peanut butter and a glass jar.
Yeah.
And they were jumping off the counter.
Oh, and then the glass
And
broke?
the glass broke, yeah.
Oh, so you're saying plastic is better?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. All right, so you see very interesting effects. And then one more quick example. This is something I stole from Joseph Drust. This is from his tutorial, which is in Z Classroom, taking surface noise to create details. So using a surface noise alpha to create these buildings really quickly. But what's really awesome about this is I'm going to go in and let's go a little bit lower. So these can't be applied with subdivisions. So you got to make sure that you don't have any subdivisions applied. So I'm just going to delete those, go into my deformer. Oh, next, no, we're not doing deformer here. We need to do bend curve. And let's reorient this. So I want this to be matched to the mesh. Refresh. Oh, where am I going?
Wait for it.
You're good.
Do I have something?
You have pin on.
Oh, I didn't see I turned that on. That's what's going on. Okay, so alt-clicking on the localization. All right, now we got it centered. So apply the bend curve. All right, and I don't want, well, I think we did this earlier, but you can take the Bronx, right?
Yeah.
Manhattan.
Manhattan.
Hey, we're done.
New York City!
Whoa. All right, so anyway, sorry, I'm getting out of control here. All right, so I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to apply this in the Z-axis. All right, so I'm just applying it across the mesh, and now I can go in here and stretch this, bend this a lot, right? And when, again, the twist, I can't tell you how awesome this is to just go in and use it to kind of just create some stretching or tapering. I can do the same for these ones. All right, so that was, this example, just applying that deformer, applying some shaders, good to go. So great for conceptual design, images, or all kinds of practical effects in this way. So moving on, I've got 2 more to show you guys. Let's load the next project. This next one is called the extender, which the extender I like to think of as a method of blocking out a base mesh or using it to create something practical. There's a lot of different applications you can use this deformer for. And one thing I want to highlight, you'll notice that I just have the standard poly star here on the canvas. But if I click open the wheel, we have these primitives. And one of the reasons why we put these primitives in here is because these are really great things to use as a starting point to apply deformers to. So if you want to use these deformers as a creation tool, which I found has been very beneficial to use them in this way, and very quick, it reduces the amount of features you have to use sometimes and just quickly go in and make the stuff you want to make. So let's go in and let's choose something different for the extender. I'm going to go in with the polysphere. All right, so I have a polysphere, and I want to turn this polysphere into a more cube-like shape or a box. So we're actually streaming right now. We've got a bunch of cases laying around, so I'll try and create maybe one of these cases. So the basic primitives, like Paul mentioned, you can change the spans or the edge loops, but we'll just keep this as is, and let's go in and apply the extender. So this one has a few more cones, but actually works very simply. The orange cones that surround the deformer, these are the extender actions. So by clicking and dragging these, this is going to allow you to apply an extrusion symmetrically. So right now, our symmetry setting is enabled for all of these, which this works really well with symmetry, but you can reduce it or turn it off if you wish to work asymmetrically. All right, so I can do an extrusion in all 3 axis lines. All right, so I can do it in Z. I'm just going to maybe bring this up. All right, and I want to start to make a box. So I'm going to scale this, like so. All right, but I want to maybe apply multiple extenders. But before I do this, let's talk about the other surrounding cones, these white ones attached to the extender. All right, so clicking and dragging these allow you to scale the parts that you've applied the extender to. So we can do this on both sides, right, individually, right, and you'll see that it's allowing you to scale at the edge loop. Right, and this edge loop is dictated based on the width that we set by pulling this out, and we also can adjust the positioning with this blue dot. So you see that we can actually click on the blue dot and move this like so. So you can create all kinds of interesting effects and variably just change this stuff on the fly. And we can press and hold the shift key to lock it to the angle that you're extruding in, and so on. But in this case, I'm going to go in and apply one more action. So I'm going to accept this. And this feature works really great by applying multiples. I just get the base shape. Now I want to make this a little bit wider, right? And maybe I want to make this just a tiny bit taller, right? So that's looking pretty good. All right, but we have some other really cool features with this. And for this example, I'm going to go in here and accept this and apply one more. So let's go in and let's do one extrusion on the front, like so. And we'll leave it at this one. All right, so we got this thing. We can align it. I can hold the shift key and change the positioning of where I want this. Now, each extender action where we have this edge loop, we can apply this in all 3 axes. I guess I can show you in this example. All right, so we have the small white cone, the inflate. So this allows you to apply a positive inflate by dragging outwards or a negative inflate by dragging inwards. All right, so you can see we can do extrusions or outer extrusions and create edges, which is a really amazing feature. And being able to do this in all axes, if I were to, say, grab it from here, we can apply a third. Right? So we can apply a third little cut line there. Right? So all kinds of possibilities. But in this case, I want to create one of these cases, so maybe I'll do a little positive. Whoops, let's reduce the first one. Do a positive extrusion, like so. All right? And then we could, if at any time you want to apply it along the same axis, we'll just accept, apply a new one. Right? And it's going to have those same settings from before. So you'll see that I could drag this and apply this here, right? And turning that off, I can apply it anywhere I want. But in this case, I want to make this a little bit smaller, almost as if this is the line where the case opens, right? And I'm going to drag this inwards towards the mesh to create a cut line or a negative extrusion. All right, so now I could go in there, apply my subdivisions, right? And you'll notice too that there is one more cone, the yellow cone, that allows us to apply creasing to the visible extender operations. So each time we do want an accept, we want to make sure you apply it before if you want to use this cone. But we could very easily go in and apply creases and just smooth our mesh out to get a very interesting effect. So
it's a soap dish too.
Could be a soap dish, that's right.
Can be several
right?
things.
And we could continue to go in, maybe go in here and apply, accept this guy, apply one more extender. All right, so I want to do a scale, so I'm going to set this thing to 0. And I'm going to align this over here to the side. All right, so I want to get just so it's not a perfectly level case. I can pull the edge loop over here. So this is where I want to start the scaling. And I can go in here and just scale this part of the mesh up, right? And I can reduce that edge loop like so. Maybe if I don't want it to be so pulled out on that area, right? So we can only apply this on one side, but super easy. We can go in and modify topology, mirror and weld it next, right? So then you get a very interesting shape like so. Right, so we're starting to get the block out of the case, and we could go and use other deformers to finish this thing up if we want. But these are the basics of the extender. Here is one example of where I found a lot of usage for that. This is a mech drone piece that I put together. Spider drones, I don't know. I feel like these are very common.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like regular guy.
Yours is only 4 legs, so technically
it is not a spider. Then
Spider.
you would call it a
Bug drone?
Quadruped. It's
Quadro drone? Quadro drone?
I'm gonna go with quadrodrone.
Sure, why not? You can have it.
Quadrodrone. So, you know, a lot of these parts and pieces I pre-modeled with ZBrush, but you know, at some point I wanted to go into apply the creasing or using the extender, I was able to quickly come up with all kinds of new and interesting shapes that would have taken me longer to figure out what I wanted to do. So using the scale, invariably going through and dragging the blue dot like so, you know, in those examples. All right, and this is the final piece. So a lot of these little pieces and parts I would pre-model and then maybe go in and apply the extender to do these cut lines across all different areas. Or in this case, like the center base, I was able to use the extender to create this entire piece. Right, so a lot of options and ways that you could use this deformer. Right, it's probably one of my favorites. I don't know, they're all pretty amazing. I can't pick one, but
We all know the deformer lattice is your favorite.
the deformer
And the
deformer.
bend curve.
And the bend
is
curve,
one
and
of
the
your
extender.
favorites.
All right, so one more to show you guys, and we'll get you guys off to the final prize.
Oh, and an announcement.
Well, and you know, not to discredit the announcement,
Sure.
kind of the point. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is something called the bend arc. So here is an example of just I took a base cube, stretched it out, went through a Z model of brush, applied all kinds of edge loops and extrusions. Some of these parts are separated, but it's all on just a flat plane, essentially. So I'm going to go in here and I can turn off the poly paint for this. All right, so just some basic details, right? But the goal was to try and use this in a more creative way to get new shapes that I maybe would have taken me longer, I wouldn't have been able to come up with on my own, and so on. So I could go in, turn on the gizmo, apply the bend arc, which is here. All right, so this one, very few cones, right? This one's very, very nice and clean, and we have 3 cones on each axis. So green is our angle, orange is our twist, and the white one is our radius. So these are in all 3 axes. So I can click and drag the angle, for example, and this is going to allow me to wrap the entire mesh. You see we can go all the way up to 180 degrees to complete it, right? Or we could variably just kind of go back and change, you know, if we wanted to go halfway, all right? And then the white cone is our radius. So this allows us to change the scale of this. So we want to go radius a little bit wider, a little bit smaller, if we want to use it to match to other surfaces, right? And something that I found really interesting is my goal here was to create some sort of futuristic tunnel or something, right? So I wanted to create a scene, right? But what I found is by applying a wrap, maybe taking the twist now, we can actually apply this like so, and you can get all kinds of different interesting effects, right? So if I go around to the details, you know, thinking about this as a way to apply to Booleans, right? I could use this and create a vector displacement brush from this, or make an alpha, or all
Maybe
kinds
an
of
IMM
things.
brush for a hard surface spaceship.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, which I think I'm going to try to do at some point. But, you know, I digress. So I'm going to go back and reduce
digress.
this. So I got this. This is the tunnel, all right? So I was able to use this, and I can toggle back and forth to my gizmo if I want to stretch this out like so. So the final image for this, you can see that we get really nice details, right? And what I did is I took the piece here, and I duplicated it. So here's the final image of a scene I was creating. So I duplicated it, turned it at 90 degrees.
So what movie was your influence?
Star Wars?
All right, there we go.
There we
you
go.
We all know something.
I'll be
influenced.
honest. This one is later in the game. This is more alien. This is more alien infused. The alien
Alien.
Covenant, the
Covenant.
ship. It had a lot of similar elements to it. A lot of bright lights and shiny surfaces.
All I see is Darth Vader way down at the end.
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
Dark,
yeah.
dark scene.
Yeah. Okay.
Greatest scene ever.
And you win. You win. Okay. So, you know, thinking of it in this way, you can use these deformers to apply to all kinds of things and use them as a way to match a part to the surface for Booleans, which I'll give you one example for that. So this is a really cool feature that I found very useful. And, you know, for practical stuff, Here's just a quick example. I have the watch here, which this is just, a watch recreated
From?
The Division. Favorite game. All right, I see where we're going with this. All right, picking on Saul Day. All right, but a practical usage is, for example, I wanted to, previously, if you wanted to get something with a curvature along a surface, you might have to, say, for example, this button, you might have to model that off of the base mesh, right? But in this case, I was able to model a lot of these parts. For example, this watch button here, I could go in and turn off the final one, and I could apply the bend arc to, right? And I can use this to match to the surface. So I could start applying a bend curve, but then maybe go and readjust the position, put this guy a little bit closer, and then now I can continue. I can change the radius, right? And actually match this perfectly. So something I like to do is, it's easier for me to model parts beforehand instead of trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to get this to work perfectly with that surface or so on. It gives me a lot more flexibility to, just freely make stuff and then figure out how to make use of it with the project. All right, so that's one practical uses I found with that. All right, so one final example is, thinking of it in the context of using this as a way to work with Booleans. This example is, this is a steampunk gun from a book. Oh, I actually brought the book, Dr. Broadmoor.
Yeah.
All right, so if you guys haven't heard of this, Greg Broadmoor, which is one of my favorite series. I love these. I love the style of the just general artwork is really amazing, and I like this era. So this is another fan art piece. Yeah.
Hey, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so
Good.
let's pull this guy up, and let's turn everything on. All right, so I have the final scene here, and I wanted to use just some of the deformers to apply to a mesh to create the grooves or the grip of the gun. All right, so in this case, and this is something I can't stress enough, when you guys get a hold of this, using these features along with array mesh and nanomesh is extremely beneficial. Right? I have just a simple cube that has some edge loops, and I have this applied with an array. All right, so I can control the spans here, and just creating one piece and applying this array, I can go in and leave the array on. So let's go turn off just these pieces here. All right, so let's say I want to use a combination of deformers to get this to match the surface. So I'll turn off my perspective, bring this guy up like so, and we could say go in here with the, I don't know, we could try the bend curve. Right, so you could use this to start wrapping to the surface, but it's not quite perfect, right? You want to make some adjustments. Eventually, I want to set this to a subtract. So I could maybe accept this, and now I could go into the deformer, and let's go in and add a few more spans. We can reduce those. All right, so essentially this is only applying to the original mesh. In this case, I'll turn on my symmetry, and then I might just go in and grab the chunks at the top, and we can use the gizmo to scale these guys out. All right, so if it's not perfectly sitting embedded in the surface, I can use the deformer to go in and start bringing these out. All right, so I got those. Whoops, that's a little too much. All right, so let's bring maybe, oh, where did I lose these guys here? All right, stepping back. So I'm going to go in here, grab maybe just these ones, and grab the gizmo itself, right, and start bringing these down. I think I added too many spans. What do you think?
Yeah, well, you like your spans. I have noticed that. You do like to add them.
I do, don't I?
You do. That's all right. I like it.
You just have like tics like that sometimes that just stick with you. All right, so I can
Listen, I've got annoying jokes, so hey, we all got something.
I've got a backyard, I guess.
He's got you got to admit, it was a really strong theme.
Joseph's tics, man. Okay. You just have a backyard. Let's say I want to grab a bunch of these points.
Don't step away from that, Rust. You know that's what you do.
All right, so I grab a large selection. I can pull these guys out like so.
Whoa.
Yeah,
all right, so using that deformer to kind of match this, I can turn the smooth on, and now I could go in and set my top subtool, set this to subtract, and let's turn on a live Boolean, right? And now you've got this matched to the surface, right? So just using those as a way to apply it, previously I think with this piece I had to use, masking to go in and grab a section here with I think I used the mask pen to go in and grab an area and apply group loops. But now I can use the Booleans with deformers to apply it like so. So I found all kinds of applications, using these deformers to either build a base mesh or use it to apply something for Booleans. So really fun tools. And that's all I'm going to be covering for them, but you'll notice that we do have a few extra. So we've got flatten, which Paul did touch on, multi-slice, taper, and twist. A lot of them are very self-explanatory and work a lot like these deformers. So hopefully you guys enjoy experimenting these once you get a hold of the version. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the demo, and we kick it back to these guys for the big reveal.
Yes, but before we do, I would also like to highlight these deformers were built to be an extendable system. So there are more deformers down the road for future releases.
Yes, we've got some really nice things on the horizon.
Just keep that in mind. So don't go anywhere. Number one, we got to announce this winner. And number two, we've been telling you guys we're going to be announcing at the end of this broadcast what's going on for those subscribers of 4R7, those that have ZBrush Core, and when the heck is this version coming out, of course, which is something you all will want to know. But before we get to that, what do you think? Should we give this thing away?
So
give it away?
This is another picture.
Give it away,
here.
give it away, give it away now. Okay.
And you can see the stand we were talking about too.
Yeah, there's your stand.
Oh, yep.
It's
So
very
that's,
cool. It
what
does
the
a
image
lot of
looks
different
like.
things. Again, we're giving away a Studio Pro from Wacom, along with the KeyShot for ZBrush Pro version, along with also ZBrush, and also the bridge going from ZBrush to KeyShot. And obviously you get the device with the wonderful Flip Steady, which is a very cool stand that you can use for this. So it's the little ZBrush mobile power pack giveaway.
Power pack.
So, Dress, from my understanding, you have a winner.
We do have a winner. So the
Paul
question,
Gabry. Awesome. Move on.
So the question was Pixologic ZBrush was awarded what prestigious award? And the answer was the Oscar for Scientific and Engineering.
Ooh.
For 30 seconds with Dress, was anybody able to name
No,
the year?
I don't think anyone got the year.
Too bad, Dress.
And our winner
Too
of
bad dress.
the
I know
Mobile
you really
Studio
wanted
Pro, the ZBrush Power Pack, was Francisco Jose Moore Garcia,
Yes.
all the way from Spain.
Wow.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Congratulations.
That's awesome. Well,
You're gonna love it.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
But wait, before we do anything, we have to let's attempt the world's largest online wave. I don't know. We just need to bend
Just
it a
try
little
it.
bit
Just
before
see
we
how
go.
it
Ready?
goes.
Okay. On 1, 2, 3. Wave.
standing.
Okay. Right. No, I'm not
I
standing
just-
either.
you
Let's,
look like
let's
you're
try it
standing.
again. 1, 2, 3. Wave. All right. I had to do something just to get some going. All right. So
This wasn't rehearsed at all.
no. This is me being nuts again off the cuff. So we want to take the time to thank some people. First, I
Look,
actually,
we got waves. We got waves coming
Awesome!
in. Lots of
Yes!
waves.
Yes.
Lots of waves. And
Yes.
tentacles. There's some
Emoji
tentacles.
waves.
it's about
Emoji
being
waves.
fun. Now, how many people actually physically got up off their chair and did a wave? That's what I want
just
to
like
know.
a
yeah, wave it, right? So I want to take some time to thank some people. Number one, the amazing crew at Pixologic here. Every single employee in this company was involved with this stream. So give a clap, clap, clap in your events there for this team. Did a fantastic job. Right? We don't care about each other, so we're
no,
not going to clap.
we'll
No.
hug
Just
afterwards.
kidding. Well, group hug. And then I also want to thank the team behind the camera, behind the curtain over here. We have a team, Mobian, helping us with this stream, getting it out there. So give them a round of applause for helping
Excellent.
us and making a great job for this. I also want to thank Wacom, obviously, for giving us this Studio Pro device to give away to the winner. That was a really cool pack and prize. Again, it's worth over $4,500. Also want to again say thank you to the people at Luxion for giving us that KeyShot version to give away. The team at Flip Steady, of course, for giving that very cool stand. You can do a whole bunch of stuff on your leg, flip it.
It's like you're driving.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very, very cool device. And the whole package comes together really well. So for 4R8, yes, it's going to be a free upgrade, of course, to all registered users of ZBrush. So regardless if you have ZBrush 4R7, 4R6, 4R5, ZBrush 3, which I don't get why you're still on ZBrush 3,
No.
you'll be able to upgrade to 4R8 because we give free upgrades, obviously. So all those people who got it, you're going to get a free upgrade. So that's pretty cool to have that, of course. So everything you've seen here, you're going to get for free. Now we have, of course, another application, our ZBrush Core. So what about you people?
What about the core?
Too bad. We're just talking about full version. No, seriously, the core people, you are actually going to be able to upgrade to the full version of 4R8 for $695. So those who have purchased ZBrush Core, you can actually now get ZBrush 4R8 for $695, and that's the full version. And the beauty here is you'll still have the Core and 4R8 to use on the same computer. So you'll have both those versions there. Okay, so that's definitely an opportunity for you guys to get a hold now of these new tools, especially for those that are joining us to the ZBrush community and just getting into ZBrush with Core. It's a great opportunity for you to jump in to the full version. So we've been doing a lot of presentations. We've been doing a lot of talking. I think it's time to let the blood, sweat, and tears of our man Kingsley, that some of you might be familiar with, because you're on our ZBrush Live channel on Twitch. This is partially where ABBK came from, with a little sideness of Kyle over here. By the way, ABBK, always be blaming Kyle. You can throw Kingsley. So see, it's interchangeable. So
Interchangeable.
we wanna show something that Kingsley has put together to really highlight what we've been doing here and some very cool things and features that you want to see. So I think it's time to get your popcorn out and get your little chips out, and we're gonna play the movie.
The movie.
The movie. What? 60 minutes!
60 minutes.
That's right, people.
Yep.
You're going to be able to get ZBrush 4R8 today in 60 minutes. Right? So before you start going to Pixologic.com and hitting refresh, so all those images you saw and all the images you've been seeing today, our beta testers that we've had on this 4R8 have done an amazing work.
Amazing.
They've made tutorials. They've made images. We are making a post right after this broadcast. It'll be live on ZBrush Central. There is one post with all the artists' work in there. Joseph's usually about 4 pages long, so just get to page 5 and you'll get rid of Joseph's
just skip
stuff.
mine. Yeah,
just skip his stuff.
Exactly.
So again, you're going to be able to go to ZBrush Central okay, right after this broadcast, see all these images. So while you're waiting for that 60 minutes to count down to get your hands on this version, I'd strongly recommend getting over there and just see what you're going to have to do in there. And when this version becomes available in 60 minutes, okay, we're going to have another post on ZBrush Central, okay, that is going to give you all the details that you need to know to access ZBrush 4R8 for a download.
Yes.
So exciting. Get on it.
Yeah.
60 minutes.
Boom,
Count
there's
it
a
down.
surprise.
That's it.
It's available today.
Fade to black, 60 minutes.
Right? No, don't tell them fade to black. We're not done. Okay, so you know what? I thought that was great. I'm super excited what they create
So
with
good.
that. I want to thank all you for taking, what was it, 2.5 hours?
We were here for a while.
2 hours and 37 minutes.
Spending
Drust
your day
was
with
an
us.
hour and 37 minutes. So, so really, honestly, thanks for taking the middle of the day. I know E3 is going on as well.
Yeah.
We've had a great turnout. We will be continuing doing this stuff. Again, obviously, ZBrush Summit's coming up this
Yes.
year, October 5th through 8th. Same stuff. Same team working with us, Mobion. So I want to say thank you, number one. I'm sure these
Thanks,
guys want
everybody.
to.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
It's been a really great blast. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. I'm super
Blast.
excited
Blast.
about 4R8 being out. Okay, now everyone's challenge is create something for Joseph's backyard with 4R8.
Yes.
All right, so thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
Au
See you.
revoir.
Bye. Fade to black.